Hey everybody, Matthew Turner, Anthony Fitzpatrick. We've got a couple of guys coming in. There's the lover of jammy donuts, Ashley Soden. We're just chatting before we start our stuff here. Hope you've all had a good weekend. How are you doing, guys?
I'm all right. I'm all right. Excited to maybe see if we're getting Close Campbell or not.
Oh, please. Please don't. Like, I like Calais as a person. He's clearly like just a legit nice human being and was a
Yeah.
cracking NFL player. But retirement's got to be on the cards, surely, man.
Yeah, as I said on the Discord, it's last year maybe I would have liked it, but this year it's just we don't need a player in his position, and we're just too good to carry him basically.
Drew Forsyth in the chat says if a QB is on the board at 6, the Lions should absolutely consider taking that player. Ridiculous tweets aside, the money saved and the potential upgrade at quarterback warrant that type of investment. It's cheaper now than at any point in the future that can realistically be predicted. I don't think you'll find many people that disagree with the prospect of taking one at 6. It's the prospect of trading for one and paying max contract, which people don't like. I think. I don't. Ash, I might be speaking for you. I don't know.
No, yeah, that's completely right. Like obviously we probably all saw today the mock draft that came out with us trading up to 3 with Arizona. I'm not paying that, even if it does get us Richardson, who has the upside to be a Mahomes star player. I'm not paying that much. It's like with the Lamar takes coming out today as well. Goff in those two first rounds is better than Lamar on a massive contract and us having to redo an entire offense. So yeah, it's 6. If Richardson's there, Stroud's there, maybe if Young's there, I'd consider it Levis 50-50. But
The thing that people miss about Lamar, because people are trying to say, oh, with Lamar, we'd be favourites for the NFC. And it's like, no, we won't. If we get Lamar, it is legitimately an upgraded quarterback. I'm not trying to say it's not. Lamar is a better quarterback than Goff. If you get Lamar, you are committing to a mini 1 year rebuild as you change the roster from a Goff focused, short passing, timing based offense to a RPO and option based deep ball throwing offense, which is something Lamar's very good at. And we've got JMO, but you need legitimately another quick guy on the outside. You might as well trade Amon-Ra St. Brown if you get Lamar, because Lamar ain't using that guy. And you'd need. Well, I mean, Montgomery is going to work well with Lamar if Lamar came on board. But at the end of the day, if you get Lamar, you're committing to a 1 year rebuild. And people don't get it. But like, Amon-Ra goes, why don't we trade away Decker? If we get Lamar, we'll have to trade away Decker because there's no point in having Taylor Decker when the offensive line doesn't matter if you have a quarterback that talented. You have a look at all the mobile quarterbacks in the NFL, it devalues what you need on the offensive line because you don't need to keep him safe so he can pass the ball. So why do we have Saul? Why do we have Decker? We have the investments in the offensive line so that we can protect a pocket passing quarterback long enough so that he can deliver the ball on time in stride. And Goff operates that offense magnificently. We might as well trade the entire offensive line if we have Lamar and invest it in weapons on defense and offense because that's how that works best. So, yeah, sorry, rant. I dislike the idea of Lamar.
Oh, is that what we're ranting about? I just vanished and I came back and you were already shouting. I'm like, I've not even had a chance to wind him up yet. That's my job.
How you doing, Ryan? You right?
Good, yeah. I've only done 2 because I've got some interviews and stuff, so I won't be on the whole show. So I've got some prep for work-wise.
Oh, have you got one coming up shortly?
I'm hoping to have an interview at my current company tomorrow for a new role.
Good luck, mate.
We'll see.
Fingers crossed for you. Lots of people in the chat. Dan Pask, Derek Bo Barrack, Big Aries in the Twitch, and David Reinfurt69, and then in the YouTube, Miss Harley Quinn, Robert360, Drew Forsyth, Grandizer, Chrome, Gino, Thank you all guys for being here. Any questions at Royal Alliance UK? And let me see it. And sorry, you wanted to say something?
No, I just need to address Drew here because Drew is talking about my QB tweet from earlier on the main account. Read them both. It's about Lamar Jackson, not about a quarterback in general. It is about Lamar Jackson. Brad Holmes is not stupid enough to jettison multiple very good draft picks and 250-odd million in guaranteed money. Ruins all the work he's done over the last 2 years. I never said anywhere that he shouldn't take a quarterback. I please do beg of you that you read all my tweets and think about things with them, because you're very quick to get at me on there all the time. You are reading the wrong context, my friend. It is about Lamar Jackson, not about a quarterback at 6. I don't post my own personal opinions on there, mostly for the most part.
Ash has found a very good emote. I am a fan. That is Brad Holmes as the Terminator, which I appreciate very much.
I must admit, I did laugh at the guy earlier who did the whole Scar and Simba's dad thing and had Brad Holmes been Scar chucking Jared Goff to his death for another quarterback. I thought that was funny, but I don't align with my own views, but yeah.
I don't know that one.
Oh, Ryan's one with Woody been chucked away.
Yeah, I love that one.
Big Aries asks, when is the Roar of the Lions Combine? I think somehow this is falling by the wayside for another year, or maybe we'll do it in the summer, but it's not exactly going to be timely if we do that.
I need to get in shape.
Yeah, I'm a fat fuck.
I mean, to be honest, once the draft is over, would be a time to do that sort of thing then, because we don't have much to do on here.
No.
Apart from, so, I don't know. It will happen. I've been trying to get them to do this for 2 years now, and I will get there.
I'm keen, and it will also be easier to hire like university pitches to do some of the work in the summer when they're on their summer holidays. Potentially. I'm keen. I'm at least keen for a pint, which is the opposite thing, but you know.
If they don't... Yeah, maybe the Lions should draft someone if they don't get Lamar. I mean, I don't know. I don't know about quarterback. I'm still...
Not Lamar.
No, I'd rather it be a draft quarterback. I would rather... Organically building the team through the draft is Brad Holmes' thing. So I would rather organically build our quarterback through the draft as well.
First time chatter on Twitch, who must be a Pride of Detroit person that they've brought over here, which I much appreciate, is called X Lost Oceans X. And they say, maybe next year when you come to Detroit, ? Roar the Lions versus POD Combine Drills.
Oh,
That would be good.
Oh,
the
you know
draft
what?
party, they always have the thing, yeah.
I reckon I can take Eric Schlitter punting. He's the punt king over there, and I can take him.
Do you reckon we could like muster a 7-on-7, like flag football drills or something like that?
We'll get destroyed at that. We could meet with them physically in terms of drills, but you want to actually play football against them. I've never passed a fucking football before.
And who do you think the pressure would be on? Like us, a bunch of Brits who've, like, apart from Ryan, who've never played before, and them, it would be expected of them to absolutely whoop the life out of us. But I would like to see one of them try and move me. I mean, I'm not the most athletic in the world, but
I'm going to say Ham.
Sorry. Big Aries just said, basically, you've got to make it a forfeit thing where they feed you American food or we feed them British food for the loser.
Oh, Jesus.
We have to bring British food with us. You have to bring things with us.
Not to be the wet blanket, but have you guys seen POD Hamza?
Yeah, I know. So Hamza would destroy us, but it's one man. It's one man. Like, if we can
That'd be the funniest, like, check through at an airport ever, wouldn't it? Like, it was just going through, you anything to declare? Yeah, about a metric ton of mushy peas.
I mean, I'll do it if they buy a laser timer, if they're going to provide the measuring stick for the vert that we're probably not going to be able to find over here anyway.
Instead of the Gatorade dunk, when we win, we can mushy pea dunk them.
Not mushy pea dunk. Come on.
Yes!
No.
Yes!
No. If you have Gatorade, what is the best equivalent that we can bring from over here, representing all the nations of the UK? It's Iron Brew. Absolutely.
I will happily, because I've looked into it, even though this would cost me $15 in America, I would happily if I'm in Florida, I will smuggle like a massive bottle of it and we can use that.
Steve should be able to get us gallons of stuff. What else is it useful for?
Debt Fan Man says, you think those pod guys can play? You have Ryan as your ringer. My money's on Royal Lions in a flag game of football.
I've played for years and I'm out of shape, so no one should be pinning any hopes on me.
Oh no!
We are the younger group, though, aren't we? I would suggest
collectively,
we're
yes,
younger.
I think
Collectively, we're younger.
Oh no!
I mean, Tom's in good shape. Tom can move. Ryan can move. I can not move, but that's a good thing when you need someone to block somebody.
They're not going to complete any passes. I'll play corner. Tom was a free safety, so we've got a secondary.
Yeah, there we go.
Has anyone read Debt Fan Man's comment on YouTube?
Matt's a lanky so we can play him as a linebacker, so you can't throw over him.
No, I got to be a tight end.
I guess I'm the coordinator then. I'm Pencilhead on the side.
Debt Fan Man said, a mushy Pete Dunk is how I met my wife.
What?
Oh my gosh.
Oh, that's it. Show's done. We ain't topping that.
We need a name for the show. I know that I've done really badly recently. We need a name for the show.
I don't even know what.
Guys in the chat, we need a name for the show. It's about any of the prospects we want it to be about. So I don't know if it's open to anything really, or it's news related or what. I don't know.
I'll back up one for news related because he didn't sign with us, but Chalk Week.
Yeah,
it's a backup one. It's like it's mid. It's third and mid, but
we could just name it "Who are the Detroit Lions not drafting this year?" because it's all our favorite players.
Actually, yeah, let's go with that because there's one of them I don't want us to draft. I picked him and I'm like, no.
I don't know why, but Derek's just gone for Titty Titty Bang Bang, which I have no idea why.
Oh dear God.
We're not going for that.
Those streams today.
Carlton Wood saying, if you guys do a combine, it's got to be in underwear.
Oh my God. Oh.
I mean, I'm assuming like we call them pajama games, like that they classify that as underwear games, don't they? As in like t-shirt and shorts.
Yeah, I guess. Pajama Olympics, isn't it?
Pajama Olympics. Exactly.
I
hope Pod didn't see that about the joint thing.
Why?
They might call us out on it.
No, they will call us out on it, and we'll have to do it, and I want to do it. I'll get up there for it. Eric just said, what about trading for that defensive tackle from Tennessee? What do you reckon?
Jefferson. 25 million over the year.
Into 10.5 next year.
Yeah.
Like that.
I think.
But he'll want re-upping.
Well, trade for him, get a great year out of him, then trade him for better value. Just, there you go, business done.
I'll just take Jalen Carter.
Yeah. Jalen's dropping to 6, isn't he now? So, I mean, just take Jalen. Take Jalen, take an elite corner at 18, take Keanu in the second, take Diane in the second, and then we've got the best defense in the world ever. I mean, like, no one's better than that. So there you go. Problem solved.
I will say, by the way, for my guys, they weren't my favourite players. I picked them because I wanted to know more about them. So it's not going to end up all being rainbows for mine.
Same. One of them's obviously one of them is the obvious one, but the other two are picked the same because it was like position in need and people want to find out about more. And yet, one of them I'm going to rip into because they ain't good.
Really?
I've
You picked a guy just to shit all over him.
That's
I didn't even
cruel.
mean to. I didn't. I actually picked him because he's like a late round linebacker. I was like, I've seen him a lot in mock drafts. So when I look at him and then I've looked at him, I'm like, oh god, this reminds me too much of a certain person we used to have, but slightly smaller.
Is it
God help
Ika?
I hope it's Noah, so old to be.
I hope it's Ika.
It's not Ika.
Oh, this is bad because I buttered mine up so much I feel like I need a jacket spud with them.
Oh, actually,
Oh.
so who were you doing again? And let's have a look. You did tell us.
I've got Ivan Pace, Diane Henley, and Sanders, not Saunders. I keep mixing the Arkansas guys up because there's a Sanders and a Saunders, and I keep mixing them up. Rocket of which gets no love in this draft, and I don't know why. I have no idea. Just the running back class is so good that he's been lost in it completely.
I will say, Ryan, that one of your guys sounds like the name of a Weezer song, and I don't know if that will land as a reference or not. But yeah, Ash knows what I'm on about. They had a song called El Scorcho, and yeah.
Oh yeah.
John Torchio. Anyway, JC Paxton says, "Hey guys, full house." X Lost Oceans X says, "I'm still worried with Jalen Carter's weight gain / work ethic. Part of me thinks he'll be Nick Fairley 2.0. Nick Fairley busted, but Nick Fairley showed talent throughout his Lions career. He was just hit and miss. Like, if Fairley's the worst that he can be, that's not awful. We just didn't want to pay him a second contract. It was a really tough decision, though. I remember Fairley very well.
I mean, I'm pretty sure we've been like begging for a combo as good as Sue and Fairley since they both left.
Yeah.
There's not been anyone since him. Is there any DT we've had since him that you would have had over him? No, not apart from Aleem, obviously, but no.
I loved Ashawn Robinson when he was here. I know that he didn't quite perform at the level we wanted him to, but I just really liked him as a player.
Snacks Harrison for the last half of the year when we traded for him. He was pretty good that year.
He was.
Second half.
Yeah, it's like consistently. It's like Deshaun. I mean, like, yes, theoretically on the good play, much better, but there was so little of it. At least Fairley was somewhat healthy during his time here. The rest of them, the only good guys we've had have been injury prone, which kind of sums up our DT experience since Sue left. And the really bad ones, like Nick Williams, have been the modicum of health and playing every week. It's just not fair.
No, it's not fair. On the order, I've got 4, although 1 is just part for Will Anderson. And then, so I was thinking maybe I'll go first just because I've probably got more than everyone else. And then I'll try and, if Ryan hasn't got much time, get Ryan's out of the way early as well.
Yeah, I'm still typing one of mine up, so you can take your time with me.
So if we go through a full rotation, and then Ryan will go second, and then second after me the second time, and then Ryan, whenever you need to drop, just go. Is that cool?
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Everyone ready to go?
Yeah, Brandon, you're exactly right. Fairley had a really undisciplined coaching staff. I agree with that. If he had this now, he would have been a damn good player, I reckon.
You ready?
Yep.
Recording in progress.
Welcome to another edition of the Roar of the Lions UK podcast, episode 185. Who aren't the Lions drafting? My name's Matthew Turner, alongside Anthony Fitzpatrick, Ryan McCluskey, and Ash Soden. How you doing, boys?
Doing good.
It's Lamar Jackson's world, and we're just living in it. That's another word that I've muted on Twitter for the next 30 days.
I'm feeling like the new John Wick movie is. I am feeling fire.
Agreed.
I still haven't watched a John Wick yet, so...
I'm sorry, what?
No, I've never seen one either.
Oh my God.
Oh my Jesus. Right, petition to remove Matt as host of this show until he watches John Wick.
I am desperate to watch it, because I know that I would love it, because I love Keanu, and I love action films, so I would love it.
Watch all 3 of them are on Prime. I'm pretty sure that you can get them anywhere, and then go to the cinema and watch the 4th one. It's a masterpiece, as are all John Wick films. They are all in their own right masterpieces.
Yeah, I'm sure you're right. And if you're just tuning in, I'm sure this is the content that you're after. But we are talking about today the 2023 NFL Draft, and we've been going position by position for the last few weeks. But today we're doing something a bit different, and we've given everyone an open choice. Quarterbacks are off the table because we are looking at quarterbacks next week. But if we haven't profiled them before, you've got an open choice of who you want to go through. So we're going to do that. We've got plenty of players to go through for you tonight. But we've got a bit of news to start off with and a bit of preamble before that. So please do join our Discord channel. I'll pop a link in the YouTube and Twitch chats now. Really lovely community of people down there to come and join us. College Football Podcast wasn't on last week, boys. Are we having one this week? I know that you've been very busy.
We'll get back to you. Depends with Ryan and his scheduling and me as well. So
Indeed.
I've got shows planned though. So yeah. He'll be back soon.
It's a busy time of year. Please don't forget to like the show, sub to the podcast, all that good stuff. We are now above 920 subscribers, which is absolutely incredible. Just under 80 away from the big 1,000. We've got a giveaway running at the moment, and if you follow the link, which is in the YouTube description below, or it's our pinned tweet on Twitter, it's absolutely free to enter. You just need to jump through a few hoops.
I'm coming.
Thanks, Ant. You just need to jump through a few hoops, and then you'll be entered into the draw. You can get, I think, up to 13 entries for it, and if you win, you get a choice of one of 3 pieces of Lions merch generously donated by our own Ryan McCluskey. And when we get to 1,000, we're going to do another one. So if you aren't subscribed already, no greater... what's the word I'm looking for? Incentive.
Yeah.
To do that. Please don't forget as well to download the app at Lions Nation Unite, Herman Moore's project to bring the best in Lions content creators together. We're a Twitch affiliate, which means if you have an Amazon Prime subscription, you get each month a free sub to use. It gives us about $2.50, but it doesn't cost you a penny. Be much appreciated if you could do that. There's a feedback form down below in the description. If you've got any suggestions for the show, please do let us know there. And there's also a tip jar down there as well. Right, folks, news. The Lions off-season program dates have been announced. First off-season workouts start April 17th. OTAs are the 23rd to 25th of May, 31st of May to the 2nd of June, and the 12th to the 15th of June. A mandatory minicamp, 6th to the 8th of June. And, I mean, that means that, as we speak now, we're about 2 months away from OTAs, which is nuts to think about. I mean, we're not even through the draft yet, but it's going to come up thick and fast.
100%. It's time to see. Well, it's nearly time to see all our new signings on the training field, see how they fit in, see what they can do for us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I suppose now, pending free agents and people on the market now, there's a strong chance that some of them won't be found a new home to after the draft. They've left it so late now that teams are assessing their needs and putting that on the back burner. So teams and like say scheduled meetings and practices are coming up very quickly.
Sorry, what are we on about?
No, just talking about the off-season training that's coming up. You know, first day is April 17th, and OTAs are just 2 months away.
Tell me about it. I can't believe the draft's in less than a month. That's come around very quickly. So, yeah, I just can't wait for this new season, Gerald. It's just going to be so fun, especially when this draft's done. I just bring it to me as quick as possible.
Perry Ball says OTA are not in pads. I believe that's correct. OTAs aren't padded, but mandatory minicamp 6th to the 8th of June is, as far as I remember.
I think so.
They wear those caps, don't they?
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
those
those monstrosities. They're like rugby
brain scan
scrum
caps.
caps on top of helmets. Why? I'm like, 20% less concussions, I guess, but I mean, whatever. More interesting news, the Lions have re-signed backup quarterback Nate Subfeld and the linebacker special teamer Jalen Reeves-Mabin. Mabin did have a diversion through Houston before coming back, but boys, Sudfeld, that caused a lot of anger, I think, among the Lions fans over pretty much nothing. Probably nothing. I think the odds of him being on the roster come season start is slim. I don't know about you guys.
They're both underwhelming.
Hey.
That's my take on it.
I mean, apparently the Houston fans were glad to see the back of him because they tried to make him a starter and they tried to play him on defense, and we all know he's not capable of that. So, core special team comes back. Sudfield, as long as he's not in the building come season starts and he's not a Lion, I don't care. As long as there's no chance he ever has to take over for Jared Goff, so help me God.
I mean, Jalen Reeves maybe replaces Josh Woods, right? So at least that's 1 in, 1 out.
Chris Board.
Chris Board, sorry, my bad.
I mean, maybe it's 4D chess from Brad Holmes. It's like JRM comes up last year, goes, I want this much money. Brad's like, yeah, no, go away. He goes away, realizes that he can't be a starter, and he comes back and he's like, okay, Brad, I'll pay your price now. So that's Brad's way of just saying, that's what you're worth. Now you can come back if you want. And he has, so yeah,
exactly. It's a rotation. We brought in Board to replace JRM because he thought he was going to be a starting Houston. It hasn't worked out. Board's gone to New England to play special teams for them, so we brought back JRM. So JRM is replacing the guy who replaced him. And unfortunately for me, on Sudfeld, I think he's going to be in the building come September because we're the ones who are proposing the emergency QB rule. So it will make sense for us to have someone that in the building, if it's on the practice squad or on the inactives list, we can trust. And unfortunately, I think that's going to be Sudfeld for us this season.
And maybe we saw why we let Elliott go as well, because he's already chucking Tua under the bus in Miami. It's like, not a good locker room presence there. Like, yeah, I want Lamar here, Tua, get the hell out. And I've only just arrived in your room. It's going to be an awkward meeting between those two next time they see one another.
It will be. Right, let's get on with the prospects, and I'm up first this week, and I decided to take a closer look at inside linebacker Aubrey Miller from Jackson State. Now, he's a redshirt senior. I can't actually work out for the life of me when he was born. I know the day, I know the month, I don't know the year, and I can't find it anywhere. Ash, with your detective skills, you might do better than me, but as a redshirt senior, I'm presuming that he's probably about 23, 24 years old. So it makes him a bit of an older prospect. 6'2", 225. His pro day hasn't happened yet, but his estimated 40-yard dash time is 4.64 to 4.83. Obviously, the lower end of that would be quite slow for a linebacker. Not takes him out of the question entirely, but it's not great. He was a 3-star recruit from high school. In his career, he's played 29 games. He actually spent the majority of his time not at Jackson State. I can't remember where he transferred from, though. I think it was Mizzou. And he didn't start there at all. Transferred and was a 2-year starter at Jackson State. 29 games, 230 tackles, 120 solo, 45 pressures, 23.5 tackles for a loss, 8.5 sacks, 9 passes defended, 6 forced fumbles, 3 fumble recoveries, and a touchdown. In the most recent season, he got about half that projection, so he kind of did as well as you might expect, but he got 6 of those 9 passes defended in the most recent season, and 5 forced fumbles. He had a PFF grade of 84.2, so he had a very, very solid year. And looking at this guy, stepping back just a little bit, he was the winner of the SWAC Defensive Player of the Year last year, so he had a very, very good season, and that was acknowledged by his peers. And he plays with the grit and swagger that you kind of associate with a Dan Campbell player. He's definitely a kneecap biting sort of guy. He's hard-working, he's got a good motor, and shows all-round solid technique. Above average speed and athleticism, and I say that in spite of that 40-yard dash time. If he's at the faster end of it, then that might show up, and I hope that he is. Short area quickness is very good. He's lethal in a straight line. I mean, he wanders up to the line, and then when you say go, he's on it in a flash. I actually anticipate that sort of 20-yard split between 10 and 30 to be quite slow, but that 10 to be really fast. He's a very good tackler. He wraps up well, and he takes good angles generally. He's got that sort of aggression that you just can't teach, and actually you might want him to dial it back a little bit, but I love seeing that aggression from that sort of position. And he's a leader. So he, at Jackson State, played under Deion Sanders, and Sanders singled him out as a leader of the team and a tone setter. You know, he's the guy enforcing exactly what Sanders was looking for in that team. And I don't think that Sanders said that about everyone. I know he blew smoke up a lot of his players, but he also was quite a harsh taskmaster at times too and didn't suffer fools. So to get that praise from him means something to me. One of the things is that he doesn't often get asked to play coverage very much at the linebacker position. When he does, he competes quite well against running backs and tight ends, but he hasn't had a huge amount of exposure to it. And because that first step is so lethal, I think he's got a lot more blitzing upside than he's shown on tape. So he got 12 tackles for a loss this season and 2 sacks. I think he can actually do a lot more than that, but he just wasn't really given the opportunity to do that. It wasn't really his role. If I go on to his weaknesses, he sometimes misreads things, which is just a little frustrating. So in terms of run direction, he can just decide to go the wrong way, which is not ideal. Gets swallowed up by offensive linemen who are pulling in gap schemes. So I can imagine him coming up against the Lions would be an absolute disaster for him. He doesn't see pulling linemen, and then he just gets fenced off and opens up massive gaps for running backs. That's not ideal. When he does go into coverage, I said he can be competitive. He can be too competitive. He can get a little bit grabby, especially when he gets beaten. He's going to be a bit of a penalty machine early. And I said he was lethal on a straight line, and there's a reason why I said straight line, because changing direction is not great. If he does a short shuttle, it's going to be really interesting to see whether he can get lower than 4 threes in that 20-yard shuttle. I'm not sure he can, because he's a bit tight at times. And even though he's listed at 6'2", he hasn't done the pro day yet. Raz has a height for him, and I don't know where this came from. It might have been from the combine, I'm not 100% sure, but he's listed at 5'11.5". And when I look at him on tape, I don't think this is a big linebacker. I think he looks a little slight and a little short, despite the fact he's listed at 6'2", 225. So, I saw that when I first was looking at him, and then you see him on tape, and it doesn't really show up, which is a little disappointing. My projection for him is that he's going to be a core special teamer in year 1 with upside into future years. I mean, his first step is excellent, so if it comes to doing something like gunning or just pursuit or something like that on special teams, I think he can definitely do that. Upside into future years in terms of starting, I think that could be on his agenda. He's just got to be coached good habits and good techniques, and maybe a bit more than he's been used to in his career. He's only started for 2 years, so I think there's a bit of room there. I project him to go in the 6th round. I think he will get drafted, but he'll be lower on that day 3 area. But for the Lions, I don't see it. I think he's just a bit redundant, because I think he does exactly what the Lions want out of Malcolm Rodriguez, but maybe just a little bit worse. He doesn't read the game quite as well. He's good in pursuit and tackle situations, but you can't ask him to move around too much. Rodriguez just has that over him, unfortunately. So I don't see him as a pick for the Lions. Watched him against Grambling State, which was meant to be his best game of the season, and that's where I've taken all of this from. He got an 88.1 PFF grade in this game, so I've come away from him, despite having his best game of the season, not being as high on him as I was really hoping for. And boys, I don't know if you've watched a lot of Jackson State football this year, but have you seen anything from Aubrey Miller at all?
I've watched quite a few of their games. I agree in the sense that he's not 6'2". He won't come in anywhere near that. I reckon he's 6 foot at best. So he plays bigger than he plays. He plays bigger than he is. The level of competition is probably going to be the thing that eventually holds him back, especially with his actual draft grade. Like I said, the SWAC is good, but dropping from, like, say, the SEC down to the SWAC, big change. He was a big fish in a small pond. You see a little bit of Dion in him, like Dion had, I think, rubbed off on him a lot. Like you say, he's got a swagger, a bit of an arrogance, a bit of a chip on his shoulder. He plays like that. I don't mind that about defenders and linebackers. Good do-it-all guy. I think as like a designated pass rusher, he's the kind of guy that you probably want on like a 3rd down when you want to get off the field. If you want to send a guy through the hole to try fish out the QB or to try work on a mobile quarterback. So between Barnes and Rodriguez, I think we have got little bits of him already. So I don't think we necessarily need that. If he slipped to the 7th, I could probably see it. I think he'll be a fantastic special teamer, as you say. I feel like he could be a gunner, great on kick coverage, could get the odd turnover, but he's a very well-rounded guy that nothing jumps out at you to make you think future starter, more developmental rotation piece. But that's where you're taking him.
I don't know. I mean, maybe I've been listening to Dave a bit too much, but they talked about Aubrey Miller a lot on the HBCU show not so long ago. And the guys over there who watch them weekly are incredibly high on him. And I see it, and I think that he's got a future at the NFL level as a start. He is the guy who comes in and kicks your ass. He's a very strong guy. He will fight with anyone and everyone, no matter what size you are, no matter what strength you are. He will give you a good fight. And I think that someone will appreciate that in the middle of the field with him. He's the guy who can, I mean, they put it very succinctly. Gerald it was who said he's going to be a Ted linebacker at the next level. I get that entirely. They're the guys who take on the block, shed that, create the gaps for the faster, more blitz type guys to go in and do some damage. And I think that he will eventually find his way into that role. Special teams is how he'll get onto a team. He'll see rotational snaps, and I think over time he will work his way into a starter role. I think he's got a very bright future in front of him. I probably agree, maybe not with us. It is a bit too Malcolm-like, maybe, but I wouldn't be upset if we did. I think he's a long-term project, and obviously, who knows if Rodrigo works out in the long term. Hopefully he does, but yeah, I think he'll do well.
I defer to these guys. As I can't watch much SWAC personally, but obviously I know these guys do listen to the SWAC specific podcast, and I've heard it was brought up. Yeah, probably will be drafted, but is probably sort of that later round linebacker who will have to earn his place through special teams and all that. Sounds a bit like someone I'm probably going to talk about, but it is, as we were discussing earlier, it probably is going to be someone that's going to probably make his living initially as like a sort of Josh Woods player who lives on special teams and can do some stuff on rundowns, but that's all you can ask for him by year 1, year 2 until you develop the other skills.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, Ryan, you are next up.
Yep, I've gone back to tight end U. Everyone knows that's the Iowa Hawkeyes. I've gone with Sam LaPorta, a guy who I feel like is kind of getting lost in what is a potentially on paper very good tight end class, and I personally think he's one of the best. So he came in at 6'3", 245 pounds, with a decent 32 and 1/8 inch arm, but a very respectable, well, pretty large 10 and 1/4 inch hands. He blitzed the combine, 9.5 RAS, 4.59.40 with a 1.59.10, a vert 35 inches, a broad of 10'3". His 3-cone was 691, 20 shuttle 425. So incredibly agile in a straight line, going around the corners. He can jump well, can do everything well. So 2019 started slow, 15 receptions, 188 yards. 2020, 27 receptions, 271 for a touchdown, and then broke out in 2021 and 2022. 53 for 617, 3 touchdowns, and 58 for 657 and 1 touchdown. Led the team in receiving in 2021 and 2022. To put it into perspective, their next receiver had 352 yards, and Spencer Petras only passed for 1,880 and 1,725 in those seasons. So he got between 25 and 30% of each receiving yards in 2 seasons. The Hawkeyes, Kirk Ferentz, I'm just going to say this, they held him back. They stagnated. In 2021, he should have hit the portal and gone to somewhere like Michigan because he'd have replaced Schoonmaker. He's an agile, athletic receiving tight end. He deserved better than that awful, stagnant Iowa offense. He carried it for 2 years, and unfortunately, that wasn't his fault. He's nice and athletic. Like you say, he goes very well in a straight line. He's got nice, big, soft hands. He's dealt with a very large workload for a tight end. I'd say catching like 110 passes in 2 years. A lot of FBS top 10 Power 5 like tight ends don't have to do that because their offense doesn't systematically run through one weapon because it's so one-dimensional. So he works in line, move. I also think he could play in the slot a bit like a Kyle Pitts. I think he's a bit like a less talented Kyle Pitts because the blocking, it does need a bit of work. Can block, will he sustain them and hold them, or will he bully a guy and push him back? not without an extra practice. That's the only real issue, but I think it's probably one of the best things he can work on. He's also played at H-back and as a lead blocker, so he's taken a lot of hits. Like I say, he's led for running backs through the hole, taking out the first guy, puts his body on the line. He's a very willing guy that can be cannon fodder. So I feel like he's very durable and offensive. He can be used in multiple schemes. When you talk about a guy like a Dalton Kincaid or a Michael Mayer, there's no reason Sam can't catch the ball just as well. The problem is, like I say, when he does catch the ball, his contested isn't very good. To say he's not strong would probably be an understatement. The ball can be jarred out. If he senses pressure, sometimes it can affect his ability to bring the ball in. Just works very well in space. So he's a big wide receiver. But I feel like the body of work he's done, where he's had to do it, what he's had to put up with a really shitty quarterback. Like, no offense to Spencer Petras, but the guy will be bagging Whole Foods groceries in a few years. He ain't going to play no pro football. And that's what he's had to put up with for those majority of those years. So I think he's going to go at the end of the third. I feel like he's in the next group behind Washington, Mayer, Musgrave, and Kincaid. I feel like a lot of people, like I say, keep saying, like, don't need a tight end. In the back end of the third, I think Dan would consider a tight end just to bring someone into the room. I don't think he's going to go any higher than venture into the second. But Sam could slip even further because he seems to be an afterthought in somewhat of a strong tight end group. Does lack ideal size and height. 6'3" is a little bit short for a tight end. 245 isn't an ideal weight for someone you'd want to catch and block, unless you're just going to give him no blocking responsibilities. But I feel like he's a Dan kind of guy. He's tough, and he's a savvy route runner, a good route through good hands, and has got production to match it as well. A lot of his tight ends, like I say, they're getting love, but I just don't think they have the production to match it. I'm not enamored with guys like Washington, and he's a big physical dominant blocker, but I'm not so sure as him a receiver. So I feel like this is a middle good late 2, day 3 early option if he does slide.
Fellas? Anyone?
So yesterday I've got beautiful I have my mic on. So he says played H-back. And I've just quickly looked up the sizes because it sounds quite similar. He's a bit bigger than Jason Kabinda. And obviously we love Kabinda to bits, friends of the pod and all that, but he's classed as a tight end under our scheme and that. Could he be an upgrade on Kabinda? Because I think that's kind of gone on the radar. I know we're all looking at the Washingtons, the Mayers, the Kincaids, the Musgraves, all these ones that could come and be a tight end one. But given how offense is, might upgrading what's seen as the front doors of the offense be a good thing? And so for me, it sounds very much like that could be his role with us if we do take him, sort of ease him in as a Kabinda, and then maybe him, Mitchell, over time grow to be a kind of tight end pair like the Ravens had with Mandrews and the guy Hayden Hurst.
Yeah, like I say, he's got like Kyle Juszczyk's, Pat Ricard. It can be whatever Kabinda wants to be, and a better receiving threat too in line. So I feel like I love Jason, but I feel like it's time to maybe go with someone a little bit younger, a bit more dynamic. Because Jason, we know what he offers, but if we're going to persist with a fullback or a H-back, I think it's time to upgrade a little bit. I think we know what we got with him, that we might be able to get a little bit better in this class.
Ryan's very right about this. Sam LaPorta has been on a team that we, especially on the college podcast, have ridiculed a lot. It has been a very bad offense there, and I agree with Ryan entirely that he should have transferred to a college that would have respected him, used him more how he can be used, and to allow him to flourish as a player. However, there's two sides to these guys who choose to stay at schools. And I mean, obviously, one, you're not seeing the full potential out of them. So, like Ryan said, he's probably going to slide in this draft. And the reason is, it's not because he's not a good player, but it's because you've not seen his full potential like you have with a lot of the others. So that in itself can create a kind of diamond-esque thing that's hidden away, which could make him a draft steal going later on. And two, it says a lot about their personality, the type of person they are. He could very well have transferred out of Iowa last year and gone to a better team, but he didn't. He showed loyalty to the team where he started his college career, and he said, you know what, I'm going to stay here and stick this out. And that kind of loyalty to a team is to be admired and is something that you would very much think is in favor with the hierarchy here with the Lions. So you could have that potential to get a guy who is very loyal, is very underrated because he's not being able to be used as he is, and, could be a real surprise for you in the draft going forward. Whereas on the flip side, he could just be not that good, and it's a case of, he's not willing to take risks and sort of move his career on. But it depends with him, and especially with those Iowa guys, especially with the ones who come on defense. They're NFL caliber. They're coached very well. They generally have success in the league. So I would sort of favor the side of him being a lot better than maybe the draft profile suggests of him. So yeah, if he's going later in the draft and no one's taking a shine to him, then he certainly becomes a very enticing prospect very quickly. Once you're sort of heading later into day two.
Question from Dan Pask about college football in general, but then as it pertains to Sam LaPorta. He asks, has NIL helped regular athletes make choices on where to play? Was Sam stuck there?
He'd been there 4 years, so NIL didn't exist when he arrived, and he wasn't a very high standard recruit. So I think when he's got there, he's just decided to stick it out. Would a tight end get a lot as an NIL deal? No chance. I don't think. Like I say, so I don't feel like even in that position generally can be dictated by money. I think in a few year or two, like I say, if it gets out of hand and it starts to monopolize positions and teams, and you only go where the money and the cars are, and when they offer you a Hummer, that's probably the worst thing can happen. But I don't think this would have had any effect on it. I feel like if he'd have left, he'd have just stayed in the Big Ten. I don't feel like he'd have gone any further. He just seems like that kind of kid that'd probably stay or go close to home. I can't remember where he was from, but he's the kind of guy, like I said, that saw it out. And as much as Iowa football struggled in the last, numerous years on offense, somehow people do think he's tiny. So he does somehow produce good tight ends, even though their brand of offensive football kind of stinks. So I suppose staying put as well, he's kind of also got that stigma hanging over him, which means actually could be the next line and a good product. So you could also think of it that way as well.
What you said about him not being great in contested catch situations just gives me pause. I mean, you can't really teach someone to anticipate contacts, and that's kind of like some sort of like natural panic or not. Because if you're a tight end, I don't care how well you do the 3-coning and how fast you are, I can't imagine he's going to be separating much. So he's going to have to make catches in traffic. Does that not give you pause, Ryan?
Oh, it does. That's why I'd rather move back into the fourth and take him than be forced to take him like the first or the third. He does have an issue with, say, if he knows someone's around him or like a linebacker, he can be put under pressure easily.
I mean, I guess the example you would use is James Mitchell. I mean, he was a tight end on not a particularly great offense with not a particularly great quarterback throwing at him, and yet his contested catch ability, the contortion in the air and stuff, was really good in spite of what his team thrown at him. So that would be the thing that would maybe give me pause with Sam. That James was able to do that, and that's why he, before his injury, was a high day 2 pick. So no, it's an intriguing one, but I still think James is going to do well for us, and this conversation may be mute down the line.
Just to give everyone some context on where these guys are on the board, my Aubrey Miller pick, he's listed at 219, so that is the bottom of the 6th, or comp picks of the 6th. And we have, as a tight end prospect, Sam LaPorta at 74, so about top half of the 3rd round. Maybe a bit rich then, from what I'm hearing, slightly.
I think the whole tight end group is going to slide. I feel like there's 2 or 3 names, and then it could be a cliff because it's a very deep pool. I don't think you're going to get many reaches.
Oh, that's bad news for someone who said that more tight ends are going in the first and offensive tackles.
I've got 3. I still think
I stick with
the first.
I stick with my views.
All right, time to move on, and I'm just gonna pick one of you. So let's go for Ant. Are you ready, or do you want a little bit more time to write? Or
No, I can. I've got a couple already.
Ant,
So
go for it.
right. So the first guy I'm going for today is one of my favorite prospects in this draft. He plays at linebacker. He's not that one though. We're talking about Ivan Pace Jr., the linebacker from the Cincinnati Bearcats. He's been there 1 year. He was at Miami of Ohio for 3 years before that. 5'10", 231 pounds, did not test at the combine. Immediately the height sticks out, but we will get to that later on. In his last 2 years, his starter stats, so he's been a starter for 2 years now. He's played 26 games, 261 total tackles, 33.5 tackles for loss, 127 run stops, 76 quarterback pressures, 55 of those came this year, 18 sacks, 23 quarterback hits, 35 quarterback hurries, 3 forced fumbles, 2 batted passes, 5 pass breakups, and 1 interception. Special teams experience is high. So this is a guy who has been hyper productive in his college career, especially this year. The tape I used for the sample of this, I've watched lots of his games, but I went back and watched the SMU game from this year for this one. So my profile on him, for me, he is the best blitzing linebacker in this draft, and it's not particularly close. This is the modus operandi of him. This is what his game is based on. So what skills do you need in the NFL when A, you're undersized, and B, you're playing middle linebacker, you're playing inside linebacker, because that's the first, his height is going to be the big thing that comes up about him. Well, first you need to show that you can step up a level and still be at your best. So in 2021, Pace had a great year with Miami of Ohio. They are a small school who play in the MAC. He made the transfer up to Cincinnati. They are a bigger team, bigger expectations, better conference, and obviously just coming off the playoff appearance last year as well. And as you can tell by how well he's done this year, his transition was seamless. In fact, he flourished in a system that was happy to unleash him and his blitz potential. So it was a big step up in quality. It was still G5, but it was a big step up in quality. He made it look seamless. Leadership. You need leadership skills if you are an inside linebacker. So despite the fact that he did transfer in from a small school, he nigh on immediately took up as a role as a leader on that defense. You watch the tape, you can very clearly see him making the calls. He is always up and around the line of scrimmage, sorting out the defensive line pre-snap, and he is very active throughout the game in that regard. So the leadership with him is there. You also need instinct. So playing in the middle of the field, you need to know where the ball is, where it's going to be, and where you need to be. And the thing that will strike you about him instantly is nearly every play you watch of that Cincy defense, you will find him around the ball, whether he's in the backfield sacking a quarterback, whether he's run stuffing, or whether he's helping out in coverage. It's not his best trait, but he does come back and help out as and when they require it. His footballing IQ and his instinct are both at a very high level. And to be honest, they need to be. If you're going to get brand new teammates who you're transferring to their team to trust you as a leader to set the tone on that defense, you have to be very instinctual. You have to know what you're talking about, and you have to lead from the front. So you can see that on tape with him. You also need elite traits to help you overcome your deficiencies. So the big example, obviously, Malcolm from last year. Me and Ryan talked a lot about him. We knew that he was going to succeed at the next level because the intimate knowledge of leverage and grappling from the wrestling background, mixed with his workhorse mentality to always strive to be better. You knew that through that alone and his ability to overcome his small size, that it was not going to be a problem for him to adapt to the NFL. And, his first year, he took to it like a duck to water, and hopefully he's going to keep getting better. Well, with Rodriguez last year, I kind of could sense that he was going to be able to do that. I get the exact same vibes from Pace as well, though Malcolm sort of hangs his hat on the brutal and unrelenting style of strength and power that he plays with. Pace hangs his hat on his pace, for want of a really bad pun. So you've got elite short area quickness and burst. You mix that in with an unrelenting motor, natural ability to blitz the passer, and you've got a very dangerous weapon on your hands. So they use him in a variety of different ways at Cincy. So in the SMU game alone, he's very clearly designated as a quarterback spy against Tanner Mordecai. So he will sit there in coverage. He'll stay in the passing lanes as long as he can without losing his position on the field. He doesn't get fooled by quarterback eye movement. He'll stay in the lanes till he has to go back to where he is. And then the second Mordecai even starts to try and leave his pocket, he's on him in a flash because Ryan knows him very well. Tanner is a guy who likes to move in the pocket, get out, try and run the ball at times. Pace has great lateral speed to go sideline to sideline. He frequently ends up running Tanner out of play or forcing throwaways because he's on him quicker than he can set himself to throw. And Mordecai runs a 4.640, so he's no slouch. He's got wheels about him and he can go. So basically, Pace is a great asset to have if you're against a mobile quarterback with wheels, because he can sit and spy and do that. But the speciality is the blitzing. As I've said, he is a relentless pass rusher. He is unafraid to just pile into the biggest of linemen who are far bigger than him, cause them issues, create gaps for his teammates. His best reps do come, though. He deploys the most beautiful and effective spin move that you are ever likely to see in your life. There's one rep where he's sort of grappling with the left guard and the center. They're double teaming him. And this is a 5'10" linebacker. He spins out past the left guard, straight round him, and the speed he has, the running back has to come across to block him. So one 5'10" linebacker takes three guys out of protection, and Mordecai has to throw the ball away because there's three rushers going at him because Pace is taking up three guys. So you've got that. And like I say, the ability to find the gaps, to get skinny, to fly through them. Quarterbacks and running backs are not expecting him to be there as quick as he is because of that elite short level speed. And as I say, he knows where the ball is. So he gets plenty of tackles for losses and sacks. And he also reaps plenty of penalties because a lot of times linemen have to hold him because he gets through them that quickly. And there's two in this game alone holding calls that are made because of him. And he actually wins the game for Cincinnati. Right at the end, it's 29-27. SMU are going for a 2-point conversion right at the depth to tie it. He flies through the gap between the center and the right guard. The center's grasping for him, hits thin air. He forces Mordecai right back down the field. He can't set himself to throw it, so he kind of just hoiks it to the end zone. It falls flat, and Cincinnati win the game. And that's all down to Pace and his ability to, just get past these guys before they can really even set against him. And overall, he may be one of the smallest guys on the field, but he is the hardest working player on the field. He may be small, but he plays mighty. So there is a lot to like about him here. Now, it's been very nice, very pleasant, but obviously the size does bring negatives, though. There are enough reps that you will see on tape of him where he is simply bullied and bruised by guys who are bigger than him. I mean, when it comes to the run game, he kind of negates this. He gets in space and he's able to use his speed to get round linemen who are coming at him. But if he does get bogged down, then it's kind of game over from that regard. And that's going to be his issue. That's why he's kind of a day 2 pick at this moment in time. If he was a bit bigger and could grapple a bit better, he might even be a day 1 pick. But as I said, with Malcolm, I saw the ability with him grappling, the block deconstruction, that he was going to be fine. Pace is going to be fine in the NFL. A team is going to love him. They're going to pair him with a much bigger middle linebacker who's going to take on these big blockers for him, and they're just going to send him after a quarterback or a running back, and he's going to have a lot of success, I believe, at the next level. So for us, I mean, we need a guy like him. I thought Derek Barnes was going to be that guy, the guy who can gap shoot, the guy who can do all the running back harassment, going after quarterbacks. It's not quite worked with him so far. I would be very tempted to go after Pace if he's there at the right time and the right place. And I just love watching this guy the last 2 years. And don't let the 5'10" moniker fool you. He's going to be a great linebacker at the next level. So yeah, Ivan Pace is my first guy, and I really like him in this draft, and I would not be sad if we drafted him.
Couple of questions from the chat just before I hear from the guys. And Brandon Kerr says Anthony is pace similar in demeanour as Rodriguez with Detroit. And Mike the Marine says pace is like Rodrigo, 5'10", 230. Your thoughts on whether there's any redundancy there?
No, because Rodrigo's game is not. It's not based on him going after the quarterback. I think Rodrigo's the tough, strong guy who just gets in, he's like a rugby player, gets in the scrum, creates gaps, he's just really relentless with his strength. Whereas Ivan Pace works with his agility and that short area quickness. Rodrigo doesn't have the short area quickness that Pace has. It's why he has so much success. Because they can line him up in a variety of places, and he will use it against bigger guys to get around them. So Rodrigo's kind of like the power horse guy. Pace is like the quick guy who will get into the backfield and do all the damage. So they are two different players. They would not be redundant here. I mean, I was talking about having a Ted linebacker and potentially someone who's going to take on the bigger guys, create those gaps. That could be Rodrigo to Pace, who would be your Mike, who does all the blitzing work. So they are the same size, but they are two stylistically much different players.
Fellas, Ivan Pace.
Oh, you've just destroyed one of my points because I was looking at the PFF draft guide on him, and who did I have this player comp? But Rodrigo. So it seems like the PFF have maybe done a PFF and done a bit of a lazy, like, they're the same size, they're the same player. But yeah, like...
They're different players. Rodrigo likes to just... Rodrigo
kick someone's ass.
Getting in the way and fucking shit up. Whereas Pace wants to avoid contact and try get through the gap and beat his man. Whereas Rodrigo likes to cause mayhem by, like, Final Destination, cause the pile up on the motorway and bring everyone down. Ivan Pace Jr. doesn't want to get caught up in all the bullshit. He wants, like, say, he will get held. He's trying to release and get through the gap and pursue. He's more of a heat-seeking missile than he is a old naval war tank like that. Like Rodrigo's a tank. He wants to get in the way and disrupt things.
I've just watched a highlight video of him as you were talking about him. Totally see what you're talking about with him. So slippery as a player, but with power. Like, it doesn't really seem like you should be able to combine those two things, but it's an interesting combination. I mean, I was watching him thinking he's about 4 inches shorter, but stylistically not dissimilar to me for like Micah Parsons. I know it's a ridiculous name to invoke here because it's a totally different player, but similar ferocity, blitzing sort of linebacker who loves to hit the quarterback. Like, I know that's also a bit of a lazy comp, but I feel like it's a bit more appropriate than Rodrigo, who's totally inappropriate, if I'm frank, from what I saw. It's not a similar person at all.
No, it's that lateral side-to-side speed. It's just incredible. And like I say, Mordecai has wheels, and there's times that he's 2 or 3 steps in front of him, and he chases him down. And, that's what, especially in a league where you've got a lot of mobile guys and running backs who like to hit the perimeter, he's a perfect weapon for it. Rodrigo does not do that. And that's not saying, bad against Rodriguez. It's just they're two different kind of guys. And I always kept trying to talk myself out of Pace. I thought, not another small guy there. But I just watch and I watch and I watch. And I just love him more and more. And the ease he had in his transition to Cincy this year, the fact that he made himself a leader instantly just ticks every box you need from him because you're looking at the size, obviously you are. So you need to look at what he needs to overcome the size disadvantage. And he ticks every single box with what he does. And I've seen what happens with Rodrigo, so you can't say no to him either. For someone, if you wanted someone to go down and just mess up Justin Fields' day, he'd be the kind of guy you'd love to have in to do that.
All right, Ash, your first guy.
Since we're talking about undersized linebackers, I'm going to talk about Cam Jones, the Indiana linebacker. I know he's listed as an outside linebacker, but for me, his best fit is as a Mike because he's good against the run. He can blitz a tiny bit. Oh my God, this guy cannot cover. He couldn't cover a news story. He was there when it was breaking. So he's just a shade over 6'1", but 226 pounds. He is slight as hell. He has a rise of 5.11 with obviously poor size. great speed with a 4.69 40-yard dash with a 1.55 10-yard split. Very good numbers. Verticals average, 33 inches, but the agility is non-existent. 4.4 shuttle and a 7.3 second free cone. The agility is not there at all. So PFF this year, he only played 5 games because he had a season-ending foot injury. 78 overall grade with a nearly 90 run defense grade and nearly 80 tackling grade, 70 pass rushing, but then 56.5 coverage. The guy gave up set about 80% of the throws his way, 7 for 9, 43 yards. No touchdown, no interceptions, fair enough. Before he got injured, he led the NCAA in run stops, which is their sort of like run defense metric, kind of like tackles for loss. For the most part, he played his snaps at linebacker, but he does have some experience playing along the D line and at free safety and in the slot as well. But he can also contribute on special teams. So he played roughly 45 special team snaps in his 5 games this season. Special team snaps is going to be a little commonality between all my guys because that's what I'm looking for. So strengths, 5 years of experience in college. He's been there, done that a lot. He's been a 3-time captain as well. But it's also a concern that he's had 5 years in college because he hasn't really grown. So Caddy's cut-ups is obviously one of the places you go to for cut-ups. They have one game for him, which is a Michigan State game in 2020. I saw the same mistakes in that game that I saw in games that I managed to catch bits of from this year. So he's able to attack downhill and runs very violently when he sees it. He's a good tackler. He's only missed 7% of his tackles this season. And if he's not there as the first tackler, he always goes for the ball and he turns the ball over quite a lot. So there was one against Iowa where he was the second man in and he literally just punches the ball out of the running back's arms. Really good. That's one of his big things. And as much as I'm bragging on him for his coverage, he did make progress a tiny bit this season. So he had 2 games where he graded above average in coverage. So 40% is actually not that bad. And when he's asked to do sort of cover simple routes like a straight up seam or a simple in out where he doesn't have to do too much watching, he can do that. He can keep up with the players. But anything other than that, he cannot cover to save his life. You give him a complicated route to cover, a wheel out the backfield, an ankle route, he cannot do it at all. His range is non-existent, which is kind of ironic considering he played his first year as a safety before moving down to be a linebacker. And if he can't read what the route is, he's just done for. He's going to be left in the dust. And as good as he is as in the run game, if he gets engaged with on the second level, he just gets pushed back because of his size. He's too small to really take a block and get round it. And when he is engaging with a lineman, he's too happy just to stay there and hand fight with them rather than actually go for the ball carrier. He just can't. But as a blitzer, as we've kind of like with Pace, he can blitz is very good. He can use his speed to go through the gaps, especially the A gap, and flush the QB out the pocket with pressure right in their face. But that's about it. That's good with him. So for me, he's honestly a diet version of Jolani Tavai. He's a bit taller, he's a bit faster, a bit smaller, but just as bad in coverage. And that's the kind of role you're going to be expecting from him, to be honest, is a guy you stick on first and second downs against the run, sub him off a third down when you have to cover. And then if you force a punt, you put him on the punt coverage team. So he's currently the 177th overall player, so late 5th rounder. But for me, I'm not taking him until our last pick. If we stay at all our picks, I'm not taking him off the board to 194. And all he's going to be for us year 1 is basically Josh Woods. Have him on special teams. If you need someone to defend the run in like a short yardage situation or something, it's perfect for that. But that's about it. Shep can maybe, over the 4 years, coach something out of him, maybe get him to be a bit better in coverage. He could be a steal. It's really an ask considering his age. He's been in college 5 years. You would have hoped he would have developed some coverage skills. And he just doesn't have that agility you really need to have the sort of smarts to cover routes in zone and man. He's just your simple run defending middle linebacker with some special teams upside for me, unfortunately.
Cam Jones, boys.
So that's everything you like about him. What don't you like about him?
Exactly, yeah. As I said earlier, I picked him because like he's someone that I get into see in mock drafts as a sort of 4th, 5th round Mike linebacker, and I'm like, that's kind of what I'm looking for if I'm getting a linebacker, someone to back up Anzalone and maybe take over from him. So I was like, oh yeah, I'll watch Cam Jones, see if there's anything there. And as I say, it was like when people watch Siaka Ika, you go in with some expectations and he wasn't met for me, unfortunately. If he has a good career, kind of like how Tavai has away from us, I wouldn't be surprised, but he has to find that perfect scheme fit for himself, because ask him to do any coverage, he's going to give up a bomb.
Carlton Woods says, like Jared Davis? Question mark.
Maybe, but Davis coming out actually had some coverage to him. From what I remember watching the draft highlights way back, he could cover. He was very athletic with Florida. You don't really see it with Cam Jones. There's a couple of times he manages to cover like a out route from a tight end or a seam, but that's it. There's times I saw him covering a wheel and it's just gone. He's been left in the dust.
Yeah, I've not watched Indiana much over the years. I can't lie. They've not been a very good team, and he's not crossed my radar, so I can't add much more to that, unfortunately.
At least he fits the name of the show.
True. That's why I was like, when it suggested like, yes, please, because as I say, if we draft him in the late just as a special teamer, I wouldn't be too mad. But I'm at that point now where you don't really want to be wasting a pick on that when you could get someone who could contribute down the line.
I mean, at the risk of not ringing any alarm bells, I think we were one of like the 16 teams that turned up to their pro day. So at least half the league is less interested in him than we are.
All right, time for my second guy, and I'm going to be going with Savokea Dennis. I hope that's how you say his name.
Savotier.
Thank you.
Like a champagne. Say it like a fine drink.
Savotier. Nice. Okay, cool. Sorry, when you watch tape without commentary, you don't actually learn what these guys are called. So there we go. So he is listed as an outside linebacker for the Pittsburgh Panthers. 23 years old, 6'1.5" 226 pounds, estimated 40-yard dash time of 4.65. He was a 3/2-star recruit from high school, depending on which not publication, but website that you decide to use. So I think 24/7 and ESPN them slightly differently. In his career, 35 games, 232 tackles, 117 of which solo, 36 tackles for a loss, 15 sacks, 2 interceptions, a touchdown, 3 passes defended, a fumble recovery, and 2 forced fumbles. Looking at this year, he had an absolutely stellar season for Pittsburgh in a very, very good defense. 12 games, 94 tackles, 12 tackles for loss, 7 sacks, an interception, 3 passes defended, 2 forced fumbles, and a PFF grade of 90.6. In qualifying linebackers, that put him 4th. Ivan Pace was 1st, though. Strengths for Savotier, or whatever you say. Savotier, I don't know. He's versatile enough to play all 3 linebacker positions. I think he could play Sam, Mike, or Will. I think ideally he'd be a Will, but I've seen him take reps at all 3 positions, and he seems to take on tight ends fine in Sam. He seems to read things great in Mike, and then when you want him to have a bit of a free run at the Will, he's absolutely perfect to that too. So, versatile guy. He can cover tight ends and running backs. He's light on his feet. He can change direction easily. His football IQ is good. Reads the game well mostly, but he can sometimes be slow to recognize misdirections. So if you're looking at fakes or counters or something of that nature, he sometimes doesn't diagnose that. But when it comes to just generically reading the game, he's very strong in that regard. He's another one who's at his best when playing very aggressively. He blitzes with a lightning first step. You can see him prowling around that line. He's very active. He doesn't like to stand still. at all. He's always moving. One thing I really liked about him in coverage is that they play a lot of zone in Pittsburgh, but he transitions from zone to man when the ball is thrown very, very well. He's very aware of the people entering his zone. He knows the steps he needs to take if the ball is thrown, and he's lightning to react when the quarterback is about to start his throwing motion. He's faster to react than most. I do worry sometimes that a pump fake could get him, therefore, because he's almost always on his way at that point. But what it does mean that 95% of the time when there isn't a pump fake, he's on him before the ball gets there quite often. And, that could really work out well in terms of interceptions. He hasn't had much ball production in that sense, but he's a guy that really could, I think, actually get interceptions from the linebacker position. He's got a great motor. He's always working to the ball. He sometimes does get bottled up, but he never stops. He's always trying to find a way. He's got good two-gapping technique when he's taking on blocks as well. In terms of tackling, he wraps up very well and rarely misses. Missed tackles are not a thing with this guy. And apparently, I didn't see this on tape because I was only watching him on defense. He has an extensive special teams background, which should give him additional value straight away. Now, weaknesses. Despite the fact that I say that he's at his best when he's playing very aggressively and he blitzes with a lightning first step, he has a very limited pass rush repertoire. He relies very much on his speed to win and on that first step quickness. If he doesn't win with that first step, there's no counters, there's no hand fighting of any kind, he doesn't have a spin move. It's kind of over at that point. So I think there's a tremendous amount of room for growth there. I mean, the guy is a legitimate linebacker. Like, he's not just someone who blitzes, and he's very good at the linebacker position. So I don't think that pass rush has been a point of emphasis for him. But what that means for me is that his ceiling is far higher than what we've seen right now. I think he's an extremely coachable player. I think he can take on advice. So I actually anticipate him being a better player in the pros than he is in college. He's another one who seems to get bottled up very easily by interior offensive linemen in the run game. So he's a good tackler and he takes on those blocks, but sometimes, again, he can get fenced off by people, especially in that sort of gap scheme that we sort of run. So maybe coming up against our own offense in practice, that might actually help him develop. And this is another one that, despite being listed at 6 foot 226, he also appears a little small. I wouldn't be surprised if actually when it comes out from his pro day that he ends up being 5'10 and a half, 5'11 and 215, 220 as opposed to 226. He just is a little slight and his build is just odd. Like, you look at him and it's like, you're not thick and you're not a stick, but you're not a uniformly built player either. It's just an odd one. I don't know whether that's a good thing or not. It's just an odd point to state. Projection from me, I think he's probably going to be a 4th rounder, just because he doesn't provide all of the starting potential I'd like to see in terms of him getting bottled up by those interior offensive linemen in the run game. I mean, I sounded probably really positive and higher on him than that, but I think the things that are negative about him in terms of like the aggressiveness and the blitzing is where I think he's best, but then the limited pass rush moves. And it's like when you come up against NFL quality linemen, I think then he's going to struggle a bit and there's going to be a learning curve for him. He's good in coverage, but he's coming up against, college schemes of offense, which tend to be a little bit more simple. And, when it comes to the adjustment, I think it's going to be an interesting one for him. I think it's going to be a heck of a learning curve. So year one, I don't see him as a starter. That special teams upside is going to get him onto a roster. He'll be on a 53 with no doubt at all. And the thing is, I could see him starting later on in the year, but he's going to have to get his head down and work, which is something that he does really well. The guy's a leader. He likes to be coached. He takes on that criticism well and applies it. So I'm high on this guy. I'd love to see him at the Lions. I think he would provide backup across that linebacker core. No matter where you wanted him to play, I think he could play it. So I'd actually be really excited if we drafted him, just as someone who can do it all, really. And that is Dennis, fellas. What do you reckon?
Yep, I'm all on board. I'd rather take Dennis like in the late third, early fourth than I would Cansey at 18. I prefer him as the better pit project because I feel like you can make more of a mark on him than I could Kalijah. I feel like there's a lot more to work with, but also a lot more to learn. Like Sabossi has also got a long way to go, so he's more of a long-term project, but I feel like the upside is there. He's a do-it-all kind of guy, jack of all trades, master of none, but we can work with that because I still think linebacker, I still think it's a big, big need. And if they're not going to address it in the first 55 or 40 picks, then he definitely becomes an option. Like I say, if he does measure a little bit smaller, like 5'10", 5'11", and he falls to like the 5th round, I'd absolutely gobble him up. I feel like I'd love to give him a shepherd and just see what I could do with him.
Mm.
If you want to see how much of an impact player he can be, and I know I've mentioned it loads of times on both pods, but just go watch the Backyard Brawl. He wrecked shit up that game, completely and utterly took over. He's got the quickest closing speed of any linebacker and maybe any defender in this draft. When he gets going, he's on you in a flash. I mean, seriously, his short area speed, I said Pacers is good. He is the quickest closer of probably any defender in this draft. When you've got traits like that, all you need to do is learn to harness it, and then you can be an impact playmaker. You know, I'm probably more higher than most on him because I watched that Pittsburgh deal a lot after that game, and I like what he can bring. I think he can forge out a career as a really good linebacker, particularly against the run. You know, he's a guy who, when he hits the holes, finds it. He's going to be getting tackles for loss for fun. The coverage does need to get better. And, you know, the pass rushing in general aspect of it, if he wants to do that, can be better as well. But there's going to be a niche for him at the next level. And I agree, he's going to find a roster. He's going to develop, hopefully somewhere nice and peaceful, where he can just, there's no pressure on him. And they can just do up. And within a couple of years, you will have a good starter with him.
Just in terms of how well-rounded he is, PFF-wise, 90.6 overall, 92.1 against the run, 90.2 tackler, 76 pressure, 77.5 coverage. Like, he's just a very good player across the board. I wanted to give you an interesting stat, actually, about Ivan Pace, and I didn't get there. And Dennis is good in this respect as well. Out of the top 25 graded linebackers per PFF in college last year, you said Ivan Pace had 54 pressures. What was the next closest? Just give me a pressure number.
30.
The closest in the top 25 otherwise was 33 from Corvin Moment, and it was Dennis with 32. So Pace has 22 more pressures than anyone else in that top 25. I chose 25 specifically because Drake Thomas at 29 had 46 pressures, but he has the number one number of pressures in linebackers, Pace, so that's super impressive. But there we go. We had a cheer with 50 bits from Derek Barbaric saying this message will self-destruct. Appreciate that. Ash, any thoughts on Dennis?
That Mission Impossible, not John Wick.
Yeah, it's Mission Impossible, yeah. But I was going to say, the only thing I've got to add is the nickname that was given to him. I've heard on some of the FSU podcasts I listened to, because obviously ACC and that. They called him Dennis the Menace. That's the only thing I've got to add. Imagine having Dennis the Menace on our defense.
There we go. All right. Ryan, you're your last guy.
I think I found a true gem in this draft class. I've never seen a guy and be just like, I kind of got excited, and no one knows. I don't think anyone really even knows him. John Torchio, the safety from Wisconsin. So 6'1", 210, with 10-inch hands, 3/6 of an 8 arm, with a less than average 71.48 wingspan. Their pro day was on the 23rd. Can't find the numbers, but was expected to run between a 4.59 and a 4.65. It's not too bad. So, 4-year player. 2019, 1 pass defended, 1 interception. 2020, nothing. But 2021, 2022, broke out to be one of the most underrated defensive backs in the FBS. 2021, 35 tackles, a sack, 3 interceptions for 68 yards, 3 tackles for loss. And in 2022, crazy, 54 tackles, 6 passes defended, a sack, 5 interceptions for 150 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a tackle for loss. Had a 100-yard pick six. Big Ten second team player of the year, one of the better safeties in the FBS. Took away Big Ten honors in the defensive week of the performance, October 24th against Purdue. In his 4 seasons as a bench player and a starter, he never gave up more than a QB rating when targeted 59 in nearly 4 years. So he is legit when it comes to being targeted. He's an animal. So he's got elite ball skills. Like I say, you get the ball, you put it in his way, he's taking it. And when he gets the ball in his hands, he suddenly turns into a running back. He follows blocks. He knows how to get downfield. He gets good yardage. Like I say, he's a supreme athlete, and he's built very well. Great on special teams as well. So against Michigan State, there was a field goal to win the game for MSU. They either bad snapped or faked it. He recognised it. He bailed out of the line quickly and dropped back and actually intercepted what turned out to be a fake field goal to take the goal to overtime. So he realises his IQ is incredibly good. Super aggressive line of scrimmage. He's super muscly. He's a jack guy. He's got like compact muscle. He comes to the line and he lays the wood. So on the Big Ten networks, there's like a safety, like career highlights video of him. I beg anyone go watch it. He is just dropping running backs. He's just meeting them at line of scrimmage or outsetting the edge, and he's just thumping them. He turns into like an absolute torpedo, and he lays the wood. He's got the rare ability to turn his head. So when the ball goes over him or when a player gets behind him, he gets his head round, he looks for the ball so he can't be penalised. He doesn't have to rely on a receiver going up to get it and him judging when to try and make a play, get flagged. He gets his head round whether the ball's caught or not, and he sees where he is in position to the receiver. So his high IQ is really large. So the best thing about him is patience. The longer the play takes to develop, the more he comes into his element. So if you watch highlights against Northwestern, Purdue, Arizona State, Ohio State, he sits and he waits. And the QBs think, oh, we've looked him off. Nope. He looks, he sees the ball coming out, and he breaks instantly. All of his interceptions, nearly all of them, come in front of him. Shallow crosses across the middle. He just waits. He reads the QB's eyes perfectly. He just breaks. And he just snatches the ball in momentum and takes it in his stride. And then he's gone. Like I say, he is a supreme athlete. So what he needs to work on is finishing, is wrapping up. He can lay the wood, he can lay the boom, but sometimes he doesn't wrap up very well. He doesn't finish tackles in the open field. So he's a compact, muscular guy. He's got a short wingspan at only 71.48. So his arms aren't very long. He doesn't have the reach to actually snag a guy, tie him up and bring him down. He sometimes does have to wait for help. So the lack of speed and the short arms they hurt him. Like I say, he wants to be a free safety. He is a free safety, but he lacks the physical range to complete it. But notable players. So we've talked about the 100-yard pick six. He got the first interception against Arizona State in the bowl game. He just sits on the route, dives to the floor, makes it a great catch in the opening field. He picked off CJ Stroud for his first interception this season. A ridiculous catch. So he overthrows Marvin Harrison going to the sideline. He dives down to the sideline, corrals the ball in, gets a foot in bounds, and it makes a beautiful catch. He's got hands like a receiver. It's not often you see it. He's that good. I've read an interview about him, and this is where I got off him. So childhood hero, Aaron Rodgers. He's from Cal Lafayette, which means when he was a child, he was a Cal Golden Bear quarterback, so he grew up watching him. Played for Wisconsin too. Pro comp, he compares himself to Minka Fitzpatrick because he finds gaps, he sits in holes, and he makes plays and generates turnovers. I genuinely think John could be, he will block a field goal, he'll block a punt this year, he will probably force a fumble, might score a touchdown special teams. There's nothing to say he can't evolve into like a Taylor Rapp, can get interceptions, but he's incredibly physical, built fairly the same. He will hit harder, he will put his weight, he'll put himself at risk. He'll put his body on the line to make sure the completion isn't there or he hits the running back. But yeah, he's a supreme likable guy, and his tape and his highlights are just really good. It's just a masterclass of him just taking the ball away, making plays. And the Badgers have been very inconsistent on defense for his time there, but he's very well respected, good leader. And I still think, like I say, Deshaun not bringing back, I still think the Lions will take a safety on day 3 or even undrafted. And I feel like this is the kind of guy that you could get. I think he's in like the 3 to 500s. He's very hard to pick where he's going to go, despite being so productive. So I feel like if he went to UDFA, I'd absolutely bring him in. Like when I wanted Sterling Weatherford, let's say, and they didn't get him, I'd like him to make a call on this guy, because could also play a little bit of linebacker in some packages, because he's a hard hitter and his coverage grades are incredibly high. But yeah, I just kind of loved him. Just watched stuff and I just thought he's just a likable guy, and he just does things that I don't see other guys do on a consistent basis. Like I said, it's not even getting the picks, it's the fact that when he gets interceptions, he doesn't just fall to the ground. He's got balance. He follows blocks. He scores 2 touchdowns this year. Like I say, he makes game-changing momentum plays, and he's very well trusted.
Any thoughts on John Torchio, fellas?
So I've done some Googling because the Aaron Rodgers thing. It's because he's a former quarterback, which probably plays a part. Yeah, in high school, because I'm on his 24/7 sports because I'm biased towards that recruiting site for some reasons. And I'm literally his highlights. He's a very good. He does seem to be a very good quarterback. So if we do get him a UDFA, maybe he can play 2-way for us. Be a safety on one side, and then when we boot Sudfeld off, he can be the scout team quarterback for us.
Just to let you know where he is on the consensus board, I don't think we'll profile a lower down player this year. 722.
Oh, that's mean. They clearly haven't watched enough. They've not seen enough of him.
I know how you feel, right? Because I can detest. If I ever get a chance to talk about Wyatt Rector, he's currently unranked on your board still, and he's someone I'd like to talk. Like I could talk about for a while probably, and he's unranked. He's a tight end. So just sometimes it's the lower ones that give you the little steals, though. So I could definitely see it. The one problem though is, as you say, is the tackling. Like, so if he doesn't wrap up, he's going to get torchioed.
Oh, right. Just for that, Ash, I'm going to go to Ant next for his guy, even though that was the order anyway. Ant, you're on mute, sir.
I think you should do it the other way around. I think you should make Ash do his as punishment first.
All right, fine. We'll do that. Ash, you're up.
We've seen the ugly. It's time for the mid player. Jack Campbell, the Iowa State inside linebacker. Again, this is going to be a short one because if I say he's very boring, you'll understand what I mean when I discuss him. So he has a near perfect RAS, 9.98, elite size with 6'4.5", 6'4.5" inches tall, 249 pounds, nearly 32-inch arms. Great speed with a 4.65 40-yard dash, 1.58 10-yard split. Elite explosion with a 37.5 vertical and a 10'8" broad jump. And elite agility, 4.24 shuttle, 6.74 free cone. He was the highest graded linebacker in the NCAA, well, Power 5 linebacker in the NCAA this season with a 91.9 grade, 87 against the run, 81.6 tackling, 92.9 coverage, 65.3 pass rush, and then a 71.1 special teams. 83 tackles, 12 missed tackles at 8.9%, 51 run stops, 1 forced fumble, gave up 92.9% of the targets in his coverage for 236 yards, 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, a further pass breakup, 15 pressures, 1 sack, and no penalties on him. Also had 1 special teams tackle, 3 assisted special teams tackles, and he missed 1 of his other special teams tackle, and again, no penalties. Most of the time he plays as a Mike linebacker. He can line up on the line of scrimmage, in the slot. He even has some reps at outside corner, like Aiden Hutchinson did for us this season. And he's played a lot of special teams. He played on 1 kick return. He played in the punt coverage team 84 times this season, in the punt return game 32 times, and then he played 36 field goal blocks. So the game I watched was the Ohio State one, which was one of his best ones, where he picked off Stroud as well, and again played most his the Mike. So he's the prototypical Mike in terms of size and skills. He's really good in zone coverage. He can cover tight ends, running backs, and some of the slower slot receivers in man if you need him to. Though if you put him against the more agile or the quicker slots, he can get lost in coverage. When he's in coverage, he can use his eyes to track the ball and just pluck it out the air. So his interception against Ohio State, he's covering the tight end. He literally sees the ball coming and just reaches out, grabs it out the air, and brings it and sort of grasps it in. So he's very good at tracking the ball. When he's blitzing and he's against the block, he can disengage from them well to get to the ball carrier. And when he decides to blitz, he can just shoot the gaps and get to the running back or the quarterback for tackles for loss. He really just doesn't put a foot wrong. No matter what you put him in, he's probably going to do a decent 6 out of 10 job. But that's probably the issue, because you're not going to get the splash plays from him. He's got average range. So if you put up against a faster guy, a more agile guy, he might get lost in coverage. And he doesn't really trust his eyes. So he can read the play, but he's just too patient. He lets the running back come to him. So instead of these plays where he could have easily got a tackle for loss for 5 yards, 2 yards or something, instead it's a gain of 4, because he just stands there and waits for the ball carrier to come to him. And he sometimes, when he is in coverage, he can bite the cheese on play actions and fakes. But again, that's probably just needing to trust his eyes and just make a decision. So PFF having compared to Logan Wilson, the Bengals linebacker, but for me, he's Leighton Van Der Esch. He's a dependable starting inside linebacker who isn't flashy and isn't probably going to ever be more than just a dependable guy. So he's the 61st overall player on the board, the second inside linebacker. So he's projected late second round, but honestly, he could go anywhere in that second round, because if a team takes Trenton Simpson, the Clemson linebacker, in the first round, if they want an instant starter, they're probably going to have to reach for him. So for us, he'd probably come in and be an instant contributor behind Anzalone at the mic. And he can obviously play on special teams, so he could probably ease him in that way. But that's about it. He'll probably consistently be a top 12-ish inside linebacker, but he's very, very unlikely to be a sort of Bobby Wagner, Fred Warner, that kind of player who can be a top 3 guy. He's just the kind of plug-and-play guy who you got. But you probably want to always be looking for an upgrade for. You want to probably swing the bat, because his best game, Ohio State, they got absolutely blown out, which probably shows the impact that he can have. He doesn't really change games, and perhaps that's what we're looking for. We have a dependable guy in Anzalone. We want someone who can make that game-changing play, and I don't think that's going to be Campbell for us.
He lacks violence. That is my issue. He's a gentle giant. Like I say, he's very reliable, but I would like to see him be a bit less nice. In a way, do you know what? Maybe see him play a little bit more angry. You never really see a temper from him or a fire in his belly. Like I said, I agree that I would love him here. I would definitely take him in the second round, but I don't know if you're ever going to be able to bring that out of him. I feel like, is he a Dan Campbell kind of guy? Do you know what? I don't know. I don't know if he would respond well to being properly yelled and dug out at, if it would really spur him on. I feel like he's just a bit too passive. He will initiate contact. I've seen it, but not always. He will let someone take a step on him. He'll bring them down, but he's going down kind of with them. For someone that's so big and physical, I would like to see him meet them a little bit sooner. But he's got the things you can't teach. I'm banking on being able to bring that out of him. That's why I think he's still my linebacker 1. But I feel like, this maybe it's not even talent. Maybe it's more, I don't know, personality, just a bit of energy.
No, I think for me, the thing with Campbell, if all the linebackers who are projected, let's say top 150 picks in the draft, if all those linebackers only hit their floor, then he will be the best of all of them. If all those linebackers hit their ceiling, he will be the worst of them. I think that's it for me. I don't see the elite traits there that will make him a superstar. But at the same point, I don't see a floor where it's going to be like he's a Jelani Tavai level bust type thing. I think he will be a reliable, dependable guy, but nothing more than your linebacker 3 or something like that. I think that's the thing with him for me. So I feel he is a safer option, but if you want to be brave, then maybe go in a different direction. But some people might want safe, so if they do, then fair play to them. And he could maybe surpass expectations, but I think for me, the floor is very high, but the ceiling not as high as some of the guys potentially around him or just behind him. But again, we know Iowa. It's a system that creates very good NFL defenders, and a lot of them will prove people wrong. So it wouldn't surprise me if he did end up being pretty damn good in the end. But just as I look at it in the class, I think there are higher value options to be had potentially.
He's someone I wouldn't trade up for, and I definitely wouldn't take him at 18. But if he was there at 48, I'd have to spend a long time thinking about it and making sure there wasn't anyone better on the board, because I'd be itching to take him. It's not just about being safe. I think he could play straight away as linebacker 1 in this team. I think you could take Anzalone out, put Jack Campbell in, you wouldn't miss a beat. I really think so. Now, are you going to get much better than that is the question that everyone has basically so ably made the point for. I think there's growth that can be had. I think you can teach him things. I think Ryan's hope isn't unfounded that you can bring him on a little. Every team needs a linebacker who's good in coverage and can do a little bit of dirty work without being violent and goes about his business without making much of a fuss. Every team needs that. The problem with the linebacker position in the NFL is that guy doesn't often exist. There aren't many linebackers in the NFL at all like that. And for that reason, he's a high priority for me, despite the lack of super high ceiling. You're not walking him up to the line to blitz. That's fine. I don't care. Put someone else next to him for that. That's okay for me. He'd be one of my highest priorities at 48.
Problem for me is I don't think he's theirs. Giving Anzalone, I know it's a 3-year deal and he can cut ties, but honestly, if they were thinking about drafting him, I'd give Anzalone a 1 year. I don't know how interested they are in replacing him, which worries me. If we did draft him, I'd honestly be like, do you know what, Anzalone, no matter how good he is this year, he is gone next year. He's just gone. I will just get his replacement. So I do hope they seriously consider him, because I love Alex, but I don't want 3 years of Alex. If we can replace him now, let's do it now.
Robert360 says, we want Jack Campbell, let's go. Was thinking second pick in the second round, that would be 59. Jansmaster on Twitch says he's good, but would feel like a redundant pick for the Lions. I'm assuming because of Anzalone, you mean. Mike the Marine, that is, on Twitch says, some of the centres in the Big Ten commented that Jack is as tough and the strongest to play against as they've seen, and that his Raz and 3-cone was awesome. So those are comments about probably one of the better known players that we've profiled so far, linebacker Jack Campbell from Iowa.
That'd be an interesting conversation, actually. Rank the Big Ten safeties in this draft, because there's centers, sorry, there's 4 of them. So they're all pretty bloody good.
And you got a second guy for us as well.
Yeah, so it says everything you need to know in my name tonight. So I'm staying with linebackers, and I'm staying with a guy who has quickly become my favorite player in this draft, bar none, and that is Henley, the linebacker from Washington State. He's been there 1 year. Prior to that, he was with Nevada for 4 years. He is 6'2", 225 pounds. His last 2 years worth of starter stats, he has played 24 games, 200 total tackles, 14 tackles for a loss, 80 run stops, 28 quarterback pressures, including 5 sacks, all of which were this year, 5 quarterback hits, and 18 quarterback pressures. He's got 5 interceptions, 2 of those returned for pick sixes, 4 passes defended, 3 forced fumbles, 5 fumble recoveries, 2 pass breakups, and he's only had 1 penalty called against him in 3 years as a starter. Interesting stat. I just thought I would throw in there. Special teams experience, again, quite high over his career. I think he logged over 600 snaps all told. The tape I watched for him for this particular one, although, again, I've watched a fair bit of him recently, is the USC game because, you know, they're one of the standard-bearer teams in the Pac-12. My profile note for him, and I've said this on many a podcast now, people will probably be fed up of hearing it, he is the best coverage linebacker prospect in this draft and maybe, just maybe, the best all-round linebacker prospect in this draft. I have him as my number 1 linebacker in this draft simply because of the room for growth and how good he can be going forward. Was a former receiver for his first 3 years. That will be a relevant point later on. So about Dayan, he is a tweener, or what we know here is a Swiss Army knife, but not a jack of all trades, master of none type Swiss Army knife. More so, this is a guy who has his own little specialities in a multitude of positions, and when they're utilized effectively, he can be a very dangerous weapon for a defensive coordinator at the next level. I mean, in this USC game alone, I saw him line up at linebacker, both middle and outside, nose tackle, 3 tech, 4 5 tech, and 9 tech. Now you're thinking, my God, that's a lot of positions, specifically nose tackle. What is a 6'2", 225-pound linebacker doing at nose tackle? Well, they have this little interesting routine. This is what I mean. He brings a load of different things to the table. So when he's playing at nose tackle, he has this sort of routine where he will stutter step and go as if he's going to pass rush against the center. And then he'll hit the burners and he'll attack all the way around the tackle. He's like pace. He is lightning quick when it comes. He's athletically very gifted. So he'll hit the burners, he'll attack round the tackle and still be able to put pressure on the quarterback. And what this does, and there's a very good example very early on in the game against USC as to what this does, when he wheels out, it leaves the center out of the play because he's suddenly got no one to block. And then the left tackle, who is in a double teams against one of the edge rushers, he has to abandon that double team to try and keep him out of the play. And what this does, it frees up one of his teammates. Caleb Williams tries to pass it out to one of the receivers, and the teammate that is freed up is able to stick his paw up and bat the pass away. And that's because he's taken 2 offensive linemen out of that play again on his own. It's really quite a little nifty thing. They do it a few times with him, and it always seems quite effective. So you've got that with him as a middle linebacker, which is where he's predominantly probably going to be at the next level, although he will be a tweener for all intents and purposes. He is used as both a blitzer and a coverage defender. He excels more against the run. He is used as more of a run defender than a pass rusher, but he's very patient. He waits for the gaps to appear, so he doesn't commit to the scrum and get lost in it and get caught up in a block. He will be very patient. He'll wait for the gaps to appear. He'll blitz them quick and intercept the running back before they're able to properly exploit the gap. And if he's not doing that at sort of the line of scrimmage level, he is surprisingly very good when it comes to taking on offensive linemen at the second level. He's got very good usage with his hands and technique with them, and he's able to bounce off attempt to blocks, allowing him to shed and still be able to make a play on the runner, despite him not being the biggest guys in the world. Now, this is where one of the big standout players in the game came, and if you follow me on Twitter, you will have seen me put it up and do a little commentary on it earlier, but USC are up 7 early. Washington State, they're defending a 1st and 10 at their own 14. They're in need of someone to come up and make a play at this point. They run the ball. The USC left tackle comes up to Henley, who's in the second level. He hits him. Henley's able to bounce off him, spin out of it. He immediately locates Travis Dye, who is the runner, who is about to hit the gap that's going to go all the way to the end zone. And he's made contact with him before he's even gone 3 yards. So Henley's been hit in the backfield, not back. And he's still managed to hit the guy before he's gone 3 yards. He wraps him up, brings him down. He's got really great technique. He's got an 8% missed tackle rate in college, which is really low for a linebacker with so many tackles. Honestly, the tackling technique is really good. But he brings him down. He only gets about 4 yards on the play. If he'd have missed that tackle, it'd have been a touchdown. And then on the play afterwards, he helps bring Dye down again on another run play. USC have to settle for a field goal. So this is a guy who leads by example in the middle, and he can make plays when it matters. He's also used as a spy, again, like I mentioned with pace before, but this is against quarterbacks and running backs, because there's a lot of times when Travis Dye, and USC particularly, they have running backs that delay the routes out the backfield, and they usually exploit that because most of the linebackers have committed to play. The running back breaks out, there's a lot of field for them to use, and, they big chunk plays out of it. Henley's not like that. He's very disciplined. He will not rush into the play until his target makes a move, at which point he will use, again, a high-level closing down speed to break up the play before it happens. And it's kind of this ability and future growth potential in his coverage why he's such an exciting player. And if you watch the Senior Bowl, you will have seen him on his drills against tight ends and running backs. You can just see a little sample. I know it's not in a match situation, but it's a position he's still learning. And you saw how effective he is against tight ends and running backs. And that teams use as mismatch options against them. He's the weapon you use against these mismatch options. He's very fluid in his transition. His hips are really great. That comes from his days as a receiver. You can tell that he spent 3 years in college playing receiver. He's got an intimate knowledge of routes, route trees. It means he can anticipate where and when a potential receiver is going, and he can stay stride for them because he's got the long speed to be able to do so. And that showcases just how high his football IQ is, allowing him to make a lot of plays where others won't be able to because they just don't have that instinct to be able to do so. And there's another really good play that I saw which just highlights the sort of player is. So he's tracking Travis Dye, who's on a wheel route out the backfield. He intercepts him really early whilst he's on his route. Caleb Williams sort of spins out the pocket, and you can see the first guy he looks for is Dye. He's expecting him to be free and an easy pass and a first down to be available for him. There is no pass available. Henley's shadowing him. He covers him. He runs him all the way out of play whilst Caleb's desperately trying to find someone to throw to. And this is where I really like Henley. So the play's over, but Williams, he's run out. He's wheeled out. He's actually gone into a space where he's got a lot of grass in front of him. Everyone's sort of committed. He's done the misdirection, and there's a load of empty grass in front of him. So Henley has ran the running back out of play. He's seen then that Caleb's got this space to run into. So instead of just sort of giving up on the play when his assignment's done, he sees this. He immediately gets back on the field. He takes the inside path to stop Caleb from getting inside and exploiting this gap. And he forces him off the field as well. So he not only covers the running back out the backfield, but then he gets back on and takes the quarterback out the play as well. Now, it might sound minor, but a lot of players, once they've done their assignment, they kind of stop on the play and they don't carry on going. So Diane is dedicated. He's focused. You can see all these little bits about him which just make him such an easy prospect to fall in love with. And you've got the versatility. So this year, 262 snaps on run defense, 67 as a pass rusher, managed to get 5 sacks out of those few as well, and 337 coverage snaps. But he's got a high-level traits in each of those disciplines. So as a pass rusher, it's a good arsenal of pass rush moves, which enable him to get to the quarterback. And he lines up all over, like I say, from the 3-tech all the way out to the 9-eye. So offensive tackles, they don't really know what to do with him. I mean, there's a great one where he rinses Andrew Voorhees, who's one of the best guards in this upcoming draft, hits the gap between him and the tackle, and Voorhees can do nothing about it just because he gets the swim move on him and gets him out of the way. So I just love everything about this guy. He has everything he needs, and he has all the traits available. If you develop them properly, you've got a high-level linebacker on pretty much every front. Now, the issues, they come with a lack of experience at the position. As I say, it's raw. The floor could potentially be very low if it doesn't go well at the next level. But the ceiling is incredibly high. He's never going to be a smash-mouth stack linebacker, this guy who you send in to clean out the big offensive lineman. Again, ideally, he likes to work in space and be able to use his athleticism and his versatility to be able to sort of mismatch himself there. He will always be that bit of a tweener, but he will be a tweener who's high level at all the positions he plays if he's done right. That is his big selling point there. So that's my review there on Henley. I just think we're going to see more and more from this guy. He's going to be a do-it-all linebacker. I think he's exactly what the Detroit Lions need. They don't have a coverage linebacker at all. And the amount of problems we've had with running backs and tight ends over the years, he is exactly what this team needs. And he's why he's my number one target on the draft board. He's not there yet, and it may take a little bit of time, But in a year's time, 24 months' time, we will be thanking our lucky stars that we drafted him. So I hope they go against tradition and draft him early.
Ash? You're on mute, sir.
I keep forgetting I turn off my mic on. So I've seen a couple of games of him as well. I think definitely watched the Washington game, and I think I watched the Utah game. And I love definitely the Utah, especially the Utah game. I loved what I saw. I completely agree. He is the kind of linebacker that if we want to specialize a bit, he's the one we're looking for. We need someone who can cover because we have Malcolm who's good against the run. We have Barnes who is getting there. He's athletic. He can go against the run and the pass. Anzalone is kind of a steady, stable guy. Henley can be the guy you can stick out and he can cover a tight end like a Hawkinson if when we face Minnesota next year 1 week, and then the next week when we're going up against the Bears, he can cover Herbert out the backfield, and then when we face the Packers, he can cover Jones. He's the kind of guy that we're looking for in this like as the league modernizes. He's the kind of linebacker that we're looking for now. We've got the sort of steady, stable run defense guys. It's now we need to get that cover guy and the guy who, he can blitz as well. So if we do, Chep decides to use him a bit like Anzalone, where we send him a couple times a game, he can do it. He can get to a Fields maybe, or Jordan Love, or of course he can get to the statue that is Kirk Cousins.
Just to ask a few of the questions from the chat, because I've got nothing to add on Henley. Brandon Kerr says, hey Anthony, so when you're talking about Henley, are you actually describing James Houston? Perry Ball says, so Henley is a cover linebacker. Mike the Marine in the Twitch chat says, Henley runs a 4.54 constant motor. But Jamie from 1948 says, are we not worried that Henley is still learning, is quite raw, and might be a little old? He will turn 25 in this 2023 season.
Yeah, they're valid points. It is a boom or bust with him. I'm not going to lie about that. But again, traditionally with a lot of these boom or bust options, they sort of lay their hat on one thing that they can do really well, and you're sort of hoping they can do really well with it. Whereas with Henley's game, the good thing about being a tweeder is if he doesn't work in one discipline, you can always work on something else. But that ability to track running backs out the backfield and tight ends especially, it's critical in the modern day NFL that you need guys like this. You don't just need smash mouth brutes in there all the time. We've got them with Anzalone and Rodriguez in there. So you need a guy who Dan Campbell talks about mismatches, especially on his offense. I use the tight ends and that. Well, defensive coordinators need a weapon to use against that. And he is that type of guy. And yes, the advanced, well, I say advanced, he's not the oldest in the world, but the rawness at the position is a risk. But you saw what he did at the Senior Bowl. You saw what he's done this year. It was his first year at Washington. So it was a big step up from the Mountain West to the Pac-12. And again, he adjusted very well. Washington used him correctly in their scheme. They used him all over. And like I say, you can do so much with him in a playbook that it becomes hard for him to bust, really, providing he comes in with a great attitude and learns. It's going to be very hard for him to bust, especially you're going to be spending a second round pick on him. So he's 100% worth the risk because there's no one else like him in this draft. I will hang my hat on that. There's no one who has the potential at all disciplines of linebacker and this tweener role that they play to be as good at each individual aspect. So I would just 100% go for it. So I don't think you see prospects like this come along very often, and you need them in the NFL these days.
Just to add some little bit of context as well from PFF's drafts guide, Diane Henley and his position rank, and Jack Campbell and his position rank. Jack Campbell is the third linebacker that they have at 64. Henley is number 1 at 38. So they, for once, and agree with you. There we go. Right.
Yeah, no, it's freezing in hell right now then. It must be.
Right, I've got my penultimate player now with the safety, and I've got to load the page. Jartavius Martin from Illinois. I got the right one, Ash, right? This isn't the one we did before.
Yep.
Good. After a debacle in our little chat where I took out the wrong player because we'd done him before. Right. Jartavius Quan Martin. He's a nickelback / safety from the Illinois Fighting Illini. I don't know how do you say that bloody thing. I'm assuming it's Illinois because it's Illinois, right? Yeah,
I think
anyway.
so, yeah.
He's 22, although he's going to be 23 in 3 weeks' time. So he's a bit on the older side slightly. He's 5'11" dead, 194, so he's a little light, but, you know, that's okay, especially for someone who's going to be playing nickel and safety. He runs a 4.46 40-yard dash. His 10-yard split is 1.44. This is a special athlete. Only a 3-star recruit. Elite explosion, elite speed. In his career, 50 games, 225 tackles, 148 of which was solo, 10.5 tackles for loss, a sack, 7 interceptions, 22 passes defended, 2 fumble recoveries, and 3 forced fumbles. In 2022, he played in 13 games. He got 3 tackles for loss, 3 interceptions, 11 passes defended. So he got half of his career production over 4 years in his most recent season. So he's developed a lot in his career from a raw prospect into a quite well-rounded one. I say he plays both slot and single high, and you see that a lot on tape. He'll be playing as the single high, then he'll take 3 reps in the slot, and he'll go back to single high, and that's just his sort of game. They actually use him a lot as... he probably plays about 60-65% of his snaps in the slot, and then when he starts at single high, he actually rotates down a lot to nickel, where the nickel back comes on a blitz, so they use him in a lot of disguises. And coming down from single high, he's very quick to get downhill, which actually aids him a lot in coverage when he's asked to do that. He's got a high football IQ. He diagnoses plays very quickly, so when I say he's lightning quick coming downhill, he can see when the quarterback is passing the ball or when it's run very quickly. And he's often at the running back if it's a run play before the linebackers are even at single high. It's really special to see when he can do that. And because of that quick first step and that 1.44 10-yard split, from the nickelback position, I saw him get beaten quite a lot. But when he gets beaten, he recovers exceptionally quickly. So what we heard from Tom about Christian Gonzalez, about like his technique not quite being there yet, but he just recovers so quickly. It's exactly the same with Quan. He disguises his blitzes very well too. So like I say, he needs to get into coverage from single high because the nickelback is coming. Or sometimes he's that nickelback. And he disguises his corner blitzes very, very well. He's got good ball skills, as I said, which improve over time. He's a very solid tackler, which makes him great in run support. I will bring up his PFF grade now for tackling, but he was very, very solid at the nickelback position, barely missing a thing. So that was really, really encouraging to see. He had a 91 run defense grade and a 90.7 tackling grade this season at Illinois. Times his competition on passes very well, so he competes really well at the catch point. He's not too early and he's not too late, which is really encouraging. And he has the experience and the ability with his athleticism to play special teams in a variety of positions. You're going to find somewhere where you can fit this guy in. I mentioned about his technique and about getting beaten often. It is obviously one of those things that is going to be a weakness for him. He recovers on his recovery ability to compete rather than using good technique. Hopefully that's something that you can teach him. I'm not sure. But one of the things that I don't like is that he struggles to flip his hips. And so when he's covering people from the nickel, if he is covering people side to side, shallow crosses, slants, that's fine. If he's covering a burner from the slot who's just going to take him up the seam, he's going to struggle. So even though he's an exceptionally fast player, do not ask him to cover Tyreek Hill. It's not going to work. And for any of those speedy guys, you don't want to play him at nickel. You're going to want to play him at single high, which is a shame because someone of his quick step like he is, you'd hope you could play at nickel back all the time. But I'm not sure, at least in year one, that you're going to be able to do that. The other thing that I don't like about him, because he gets beaten so often, he recovers quickly, yes. but he does get handsy and he instigates contact even when he doesn't get beaten. So he'll be playing off man in nickel. And 5 yards down the field, he'll initiate contact. And it's like, that's going to be flagged all day in the NFL as illegal contact. You're not going to get away with that. Some of it's completely unnecessary. Some of it's because he's getting beaten. But he's got bad habits that you're going to need to coach him out of. And I don't like that at all. He's going to be an absolute penalty machine in the pros at the moment. I'm projecting him in the late third round at the moment, maybe mid-third round. The thing is, that sort of speed, that recovery ability, and his instincts at single high are not things that you can teach particularly easily. It's just someone with that raw ability that I really like and good instincts. But there's such big red flags with him weakness-wise as well. I think you can coach him out of it. I'm going to bank on the upside. And at single high, who cares if he's instigating contact at the nickel, because he's not going to be doing that there. I think he can be a bit of an enforcer. His competition at the catch point is going to make him an absolute menace with the ball in the air, and he's got the ball production to match. I mean, one of the interceptions he had in one of the games I saw was just exceptional, where he was running toe-to-toe with a wide receiver going for a post route. And he just manages to turn his head in time when he can see that the receiver's about to catch the ball. And he can turn his head and catch the ball in a snap. It's really impressive. So there's a lot of stuff to like, and there's a lot of stuff to dislike. At worst, he's going to be an exceptionally good special teamer and a sub-package nickelback, and he's going to match up well against those slower guys, those possession receivers, those bigger tight ends, because he competes so well. So kind of big slot matchup weapons, single high guy. I think there's a lot of stuff that you can do with him. He's one of the guys I'm actually higher on, I think, compared to the consensus. So I'm impressed with him. Have you guys seen... I know that Illinois churns out those DBs, so I'm hoping that you guys have seen a bit of Quan Martin. What do you think of him?
And just for the record, in the chat mentioned it, it's Illini. It's the Illinois Fighting Illini. Just so.
Illini.
Yeah.
Illinois. Illini.
The Illinois Fighting Illini.
Fair enough. Apologies.
I learned that one. I had this whole thing with Maryland and that, so don't worry. It's fine. They're just weird at spelling things, yeah.
Illinois. I guess I can see it.
Anyhow, as for him, I like him. I think out the three, he is the guy who has the potential to be the best hybrid. He is really. He is a little bit of safety, a little bit of corner. I always think that Devon he is just an outside corner completely, and so yeah. If you want a hybrid, he's the one you go to, and I think he will be very good. I think he will take longer to develop than the other two will, though. But so he's more your long-term project. If you want one, you've got an outside starting corner, you've got probably an outside, maybe more sort of an inside slot corner guy, and then you've got a developmental hybrid, and he's the development guy. So it all depends on what your poison is. If you're prepared to wait a year or two with him and develop him, he will probably fit our system very well. But if you're a bit more impatient, then you might want one of the other guys. But I think there's no doubt, again, he's going to be a very good player. He's coming out of an incredibly talented class. It's rare that you get three DBs this good coming out together at the same time. And I think they're all going to be hits in the league. It's just development times. His is the longest of the three, and that's not a slight against him. That is just how he plays, the position he plays. It's a lot more specialist, a lot harder, but he'll get there.
Completely agree. So it's going to be a common theme, I think, in the next couple of guys that I'm going to repeat in this. But there's 4 guys in the draft that if we take them, I would advocate, even though I'm the biggest Will Harris defender on this podcast, I would advocate first cutting him. Because if you've got the upside of a Martin, of the guy I'm going to talk about the guy that I think Ant's going to talk about if the plan sheet's right, why keep Will Harris around on basically a veteran minimum contract against the salary when you have the upside of someone who could, in a couple, like next year after we get rid of after Chauncey Gardner-Johnson probably goes and gets his bag elsewhere, you've got someone who can slot right in and be a high upside slot hybrid. So why keep Will Harris around? But also the fun fact about Martin, Who was his roommate in college?
It's going to be Kirby, I guess.
It's Kirby. So who better person to help him integrate himself into the system, into Detroit, than someone who used to be his roommate? I can imagine him sleeping on Kirby's sofa, like Jack Fox did with Matt Prater when he first came to us, like Julian did with Romeo when he came when they came together. It's just a perfect little marriage.
I can see I've sparked arguments in the chat about how to say the Illinois name, which is funny because everyone's trying to say it a different way. It all sounds the same to me.
So I was actually told by an American that it's Illini, so I don't know. It depends what part of the country you come from or something. I don't know, but I've always known him as the Illinois Fighting Illini. So
James McClure says Illini.
Yeah, that's like I say it. Illini.
Illini, yeah. Plan B says Illini. But yeah, there we go. That's all good. Right, we've had enough talking about the Illinois fighting somethings. We're going to move on to, let's go for Ash's last guy. And if you've not heard him talk about this guy before, you've never listened to this podcast before, Ash.
Yep, this is a guy that you're going to be very familiar with if you've listened to us, or if you tune into a lot of Eric Schlitt's content, because he is also a big fan of this guy. So I feel a bit vindicated. We're, of course, talking about the donut monster himself, Jamie Robinson, the Florida State DB. While he might have underperformed a tiny bit at the combine with his 5.94 RAS score, hoping he can fix that on Friday at our pro day. Partly it's because of his size. He's a bit shorter than me. He's 5'10 and a half, and he's 191 pounds. A bit small for the position. But then he puts up 23 reps on the bench, which is a 9.48. Despite his size, this is a guy that if you get hit by him, you bloody know about it. Like, if you want proof, you can just go on my Twitter. I've retweeted it so many times. This sack against Miami this year, where he just blitzes, gets to the quarterback, and just chucks him down. No matter what happens, if he comes to us, if he goes to the Florida team, he has written himself into the rivalry with that sack. It is going to be framed by some people because it's just iconic. Despite his relatively slow perception, at least by me, when it first happened, the 4.59 40-yard dash, his speed actually came out as great since he had a 1.51 10-yard split, which shows that when he sees the play, he's able to close just like that. So to sort of make it a bit fairer, I've watched 2 games this season in particular, even though I've watched every single one he's played for the past 2 years, because as you can tell from behind me, I am a Florida State fan. So I've watched Clemson and Boston College, a sort of good team he's played against, and a team that we blew out so hard that we pulled the starters at the start of the fourth quarter because we were just that dominant. So this season, he earned himself an 80.1 defense grade from PFF with an 80.1 grade against the run, 88 tackling grade, 78 coverage grade, 69 pass rush grade, though I dispute that because for some reason they didn't track his sack against Miami, and then 65.5 special teams grade. He had 65 tackles with 7 misses at 7.4%, 23 run stops. He gave up 56% of the targets in his range for 173 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 3 pass breakups. He had 15 pressures, 2 sacks, and 2 penalties. And then on special teams, he had 1 solo special team sack, 3 assisted tackles on there, 2 missed, so that's 33.3, but that could be cleaned up with technique, and then 0 penalties. So for the most part, because of a scheme we ran this season, he played a lot of free safety and a 2 high because Adam Fuller, for some reason, well, it's because he wanted to limit the big play, played him a lot of that. But he also has a lot of snaps at strong safety with 156, 96 at linebacker, 167 in the slot, 1 outside corner, 24 outside the tackle on the defensive line, 42 in kick coverage, 10 on punt return, 17 on punt coverage, and 3 field goal blocks. So his strengths, experience across the defense, 633 career box snaps, 759 deep snaps, and 1,348 snap snaps. So, and he would move between the position groups day to day in meetings. So one day he'd turn up and do the cornerback drills and meetings. The next day he'll do it with the safeties. The next day with the linebackers. So he'd try and make sure that he was as well-rounded a guy as possible. He's also he was a culture setter. So he transferred from South Carolina to an absolutely stinking Florida State program. And he has left it on the verge of being one of the best rosters and teams in the ACC and arguably the country. He also took players under his wing and mentored them. So Sam McCall, the 5-star safety who came in this past season, fortunately transferred away because he didn't get playing time. He's also done it with Ronaldo Green and Cheyenne Brown, who are two guys who came in at corner and are his presumed replacements on the defense this season. He also has an endless motor. There's plays where he's just covered a kickoff or a punt, and then he's there chasing the running back on the first down. He does not ever give up. And he's a really, really good communicator. He was the leader of the secondary for the Noles and was one of the guys who passed out the plays. As for the actual play, he deals with motion pretty well, and he's able to move between the high safety and slot pretty easily, where sometimes he'd be in the 2 deep and then suddenly rotate down into a slot, or then vice versa. And he's light on his feet. So when he's coming back, his back pedal to sort of flip his hips and cover deep routes, he's able to do that very easily. And then when he does crash downhill on screens, he's able to do it quickly. Perhaps this comes from him coming against Torchio and Ward and our other running backs who are some of the most productive in the ACC the past couple of years. He's able to sniff out screens and just get to them. And he's productive on the ball. So this season, not this season, just gone the season before, he was the co-leader for interceptions in the ACC. And he's, despite his size, he's able to use leverage to get past slight receiver blocks to get to the ball carrier on outside zone runs. And then on runs where the running back gets to the second level, if they're not too fast, he's able to meet them well, square them off, and sort of stop their momentum before getting them down. And he reads speed option plays pretty well, where he just cuts off the running back and uses the sideline as an extra defender. And then, as I've mentioned before, with the Miami sack, he's a really effective blitzer from the slot and from the safety position, where he can just come down, go through a gap, and get to the running back or quarterback. As for his weaknesses, he is small, so he's not going to be a tight end killer at all. If we want to match him up on, say, a Harkinson or a tight end in, he's not going to do that well, and he can be bullied by tight ends when he's going up against him as a blocker. And he is quicker than he is fast. He has average speed for safety, but don't expect him to cover running backs when they get through the second level that well, or Tyreek Hill, as mentioned before. And then partly because of his speed, but also I argue because of the scheme, sometimes when he's in the safety position, he can be out of the play just completely. He could just be left behind if he doesn't read it too quickly. But that's very rare because he is a very cerebral player. And sometimes when he's lined up as a slot over like a trio bunch set, he can get a bit confused about handing off receivers to people, which is something he can probably work on. But his main problem for me is his tackling form. So either he just goes for the legs and tries to take out the player completely and misses, or he just leads with his shoulder and tries to hit stick the player and try and force the ball out. He needs to sort of slow down himself and sort of take a second and work on the form, because despite being a really good tackler, he sometimes can just miss and it leads to big plays. So PFF compares him to good old Quandre Diggs. But for me, I have two comparisons. For the sort of older one is a slightly smaller Charles Woodson, who was obviously listed as a corner, but he could play anywhere from the box to free safety. But, and this is something I mentioned to Matt a couple of days ago in the Discord, if you want a more modern one, think Jeff Okudah against Dallas. Jeff is bigger, but Jamie Robinson can just fit that sort of overhang, slot defender, box corner sort of role so well. So who better to learn from than Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and Jeff, who've done that before taking over next year as the potential starter. So it's like sort of see where he's going to fit in with us. He's the 88th overall player on the consensus board and the 8th safety. He's projected as a third-round pick. And you might be able to tell on the draft show, if that happens, we take him in the third round, you're going to see me dance, because he's just such a perfect fit for us. like Eric has mentioned it so many times on Pro to Detroit and his own podcast that he thinks he's one of the few players Dan was talking about at the combine when he said they had interviews and they came up as football guys, they're kind of guys. Jamie just fits that to a T. And as I've said, if we take him, bye Will Harris. Even though I love Will Harris and think he's a good slot option for us, he can give us that sort of baseline. Jamie can bring that year one with some special teams upside and could be a very, very good starting slot safety for us year two if John Johnson goes. And because he also has the experience as a sort of split safety, on some downs you can maybe use him as a Deshaun Elliott replacement where you sort of have him there to read the run and to do some cover things if you really need to while you have John Johnson in the slots. So, yep, there is my rant about my favourite player over.
Ash watches them every week. There's not really anything I can add that he won't have seen. So there's only one stat he missed out, which is very important, though. He is 0-2 against NC State. So sucks.
Ouch. Ouch. Yeah, I'm not going to add anything more to that either. I don't have the repertoire of knowledge for him. So we're going to move it on to Ant's final player as well.
Hang on, can you do your last one first? And then
All right, I'll do my last player. I thought that it would be a good cover to have the number one prospect in the draft as someone that I would take a little look at. So he is on the cover because I thought that I'd go and check the tape on defensive end / outside linebacker Will Anderson from Alabama. Now, obviously, with the rest of these guys, we're looking at day 2 and below. But with Will, he's been the number one, overall pick incumbent from, last year at least. And he's kind of fallen off number one just because of the movement at the top of the draft. But he's still got that sort of caliber of player that you think is going to go maybe in those top 3 picks. And I've seen a lot of Alabama, but I haven't really zeroed in on Will specifically because there's just too many players on that Alabama team to actually have a look at. So I thought I'd just watch one game of his to see whether all the hype is really worth it. And to do him justice, I thought I'd watch a 2021 game rather than a 2022 game. 2022, he was pushed inside into 3 tech a lot, and that has actually made people sour on him a little bit as a prospect. He definitely projects better on the outside as a 7 technique, 9 technique, 11 technique, or as an outside linebacker in a 3-4. So I thought it'd be more justice for him to watch some 2021 tape. So I ended up watching his game against Tennessee, where he got a 79.7 PFF grade. So a game where he's going to look good, right? I wasn't actually trying to do him a disservice here. And if you've not heard of Will Anderson, let me just do a little bit of stuff on him. Number 31 for the Alabama Crimson Tide, 21 years old, true junior, 6'3.5", 253, 40-yard dash of 4.6 flat, 10-yard split 1.61. He was a 4 or 5-star recruit out of high school, depending on which recruiting platform you use. In his career, only 3 years, 41 games, 204 tackles, 114 solo, 58.5 tackles for a loss, 34.5 sacks, 1 interception, 1 touchdown, 4 passes defended. In 2022, 13 games, 51 tackles, 17 tackles for loss, 10 sacks, an interception, a touchdown, and a pass defended in a PFF grade of 84.1. But that year that I talked about before, that really good year that he had in 2021, he had 31 tackles for a loss and 17.5 sacks. He's a 2-time consensus All-American, a 2-time Nagurski Award winner given by the Football Writers of America for the best NCAA defensive player, and he's also won the Bednarik Award for the best defensive player per the Maxwell Football Club. Anderson is a versatile chess piece. He can play anywhere from the 3 to the 9 technique, and he can drop into coverage and not look out of place. I saw several reps in this Tennessee game where he was covering running backs, tight ends in the flat, and he moves very well for someone of his size, especially when it's not going to come naturally to him. He does project best, as I mentioned before, at kind of 5 to 7 technique, really. He performs equally well standing up or in three-point stance. He can anchor the point of attack with ferocity in run defense. His power for someone of his size is exceptional, and he converts that to speed very well. It's a rare combination of that speed and power, and he can release easily from like offensive line grappling, which is really impressive. He's got a good array of pass rush moves. He can rip and pull very well. He doesn't destroy offensive lines with his bull rush. Like, he does enough to make plays, and that's what's important to him. And when I say that, I'm talking about some quality opposition he's played against. You know, if he's going to go up against New Mexico State, fine, he's going to destroy them. That's not what I'm focusing on here. Against NFL quality opposition, what is he going to do? And he doesn't blow them away with speed rush easier. It's a combination of the fact that he's a plus level speed guy and a plus level power guy together. But individually, they're not exceptional in themselves. You know, he's not the most powerful edge defender you ever see. He's definitely not the fastest guy you ever see. His speed doesn't pop on tape on its own. It's the two together that make him great. And he's just the most polished edge defender I've ever seen at the college level. Like, he just works. Like, he's just good. I love it. He's got a never-ending motor. The number of times that he starts off on one side of the defensive line and he's mopping things up on the other side, having come all the way round, is off the chart. Now, all of this you probably know, but coming on to the weaknesses, when he gets caught by an offensive lineman, it happens often, but he doesn't beat people around the outside with speed. It can take him, therefore, a second to win because, you know, he's a 1.6, 110 yard split guy. He's not Jatavius Martin with his 1.44. Like, his first step isn't that fast. And so when he does win, and he always wins, like, he never doesn't win, but when he does win, it might take him a half a second longer than someone who's got a quicker first step. Now, in the college level, when quarterbacks, when they're passing, hold it for that bit longer, that's fine. He racks up the sacks. At the NFL, some of these guys are getting it out in 2.5 seconds. Now, sometimes no edge defender can get to that. But for some of those guys where a tenth of a second makes a difference, I wonder whether Will is actually going to have the production that you've seen in college. Like I said, he's the most polished college edge player I've ever seen. But because he's not exceptional with speed or power individually, I question whether it's going to translate in the NFL generally when he comes up against quality opposition day in, day out at the tackle position. He doesn't have the full array of pass moves that you'd like to see. There is no spin move. He doesn't try it. There are no cross chops. He doesn't try it. And therefore, you know, yes, that's a weakness. Maybe you could say that's a strength. With his production so far, he hasn't had to do it. When he gets taught it, he's going to become an even better player. But I do question why he's coming from the best college team there's been in the last decade. And he hasn't tried to develop that. It's worrying to me that he hasn't tried that. The thing I like about him most is just how slippery he is. He challenges every player on the offensive line. So he'll go into the offensive tackle. He likes to bull rush. Like, that's his thing. But where he really gives people trouble is he'll slide from the tackle into the guard and actually play them off against each other. So you'll see him go through the B or the A gap quite a lot. And actually you don't see him challenge the outside too much. Sets the edge fine. But it's the combination of tackle and guard that you're going to need to have against him to stop him. So I think that's going to work quite well in the NFL because quite often everyone focuses on having a really quality tackle and sometimes doesn't have that quality at guard, and he'll exploit that if he's given the chance. But So that's my thing on him. And because of my worries about him projecting to the NFL in terms of coming up against quality opposition and not having that thing to hang his hat on in terms of not being the fastest guy and not being the most powerful guy, but having both of them. Well, what happens then if he comes up against a guy who can just deal with that? And in the Tennessee game, I think it was this year, he got bottled up by Darnell Wright all night. But the tackle that he came up against in 2021 in the game I watched him against was Cade Mays, who was a 6th round draft pick that year. He's now at Carolina and playing guard for them. And Cade Mays gave him a lot of trouble compared to what I've seen from other games. And this guy was a 6th round pick. So I think he's a top 10 pick. But I don't know if he's the best player in the draft, as he was so eloquently described to all of us last year and afterwards. He destroyed his opposition. There's no doubt he racks up the stats and he's an extremely good player, but I just don't know whether he's worthy of that kind of top 3 mantle that he's been billed at. Now, he wins so easily, his motor's exceptional, he'll be productive in the NFL, but will he be that special guy? Will he be Myles Garrett? I have a higher grade on Aiden Hutchinson than I do for him. And the reason I do is because I trust Hutch to perform at the pros more than I do Will Anderson. The reason for that is that Hutchinson, for me, has abilities he can hang his hat on. Hutchinson is a more mobile guy when it comes to 3-cone drill, shuttle stuff. He's got more functional side-to-sideness compared to Will. Will does it with power and slides across you in contact. But Hutchinson will do it before contact's even initiated. Because Hutchinson actually uses the ability to sidestep with his speed better than Will does. And I think that actually provides a higher floor than Will Anderson will have at the next level. I still think Will be a terrific player in the pros. I just don't know whether he's worthy of the praise that everyone gives him. And so I am out on him at 3, and everyone seems to want to trade up to 3 to go and get him. I don't want to do that. I don't think he deserves it, personally. But I know a lot of people disagree with me, and I'm expecting a plenty of hate for that take. But I'm bracing myself. Boys, what do you make of Will Anderson?
I mean, you're not getting no hate for having your opinion. That's what you think. That is what you think with him. I mean, I am in the opposite camp. I'm not going to lie. I think he is a generational player. And I know that term gets thrown around very loosely a lot, but the impact he's had at the collegiate level on that Alabama team has been absolutely immense. I mean, people say he had a down year this year. I mean, he was in double-digit sacks and at nearly 20 tackles for loss. He still had a damn good year, and that was a down year. I mean, some of the stuff he's done there is incredible. As a run defender, you're not going to find really anyone better in this draft at all. Yes, he could be more nuanced as a pass rusher, but he's young. He's got the ability to grow into that role. I mean, he's only spent 3 years in college, so he ain't the oldest prospect in the world. He's got a lot of growth coming ahead of him, and I think just in terms of the way he deals with double teams, the amount of trouble he causes on the line, I mean, not many players can do that like him. I mean, name me the other edge rushers on that Alabama team. It's not like there's a creme de la creme star quality guys there with him. You look at the interior guys, DJ Dale, these guys, they're day 3 picks. There's not really another edge rusher there. I mean, they had Drew Sanders and they let him go. I don't know why, but, it's him. It's always been him. Teams focus on him. You want a chipping tight end, a running back who's going to come in and lay a hit on someone. It's on him. And the production is still there after all that. I just think he's going to be a dominant game wrecker, and I don't think you've seen the best of him yet. And you don't forget, he's going up against the creme de la creme in the SEC. I know the Bama players and they're on good teams, but they're up against some of the best players going as well. A lot of NFL quality tackles and offensive linemen. running backs, quarterbacks, all these guys, and to still get that level of production and be as dominant as you are. Yeah, I don't think he's the superstar level that he's made out to be at the minute, but I think he can get there. And I think he's well worthy of a number 3 pick. And I think, and I know it's controversial, his ceiling's higher than Hutch if he gets going, just simply because of the sheer dominance he brings. Hutch is good, but he's not truly dominant like Myles Garrett can be. He can be Myles Garrett. Will Anderson can. Might be a little longer than people expect, maybe a year or so, but you'll get there.
It's like I'm going to have to sit the fence because I'm literally in between the two of you. I don't think Anderson can be Garrett. Just doesn't have that athletic upside that Garrett had. And to be fair, that Hutch also had. As we said, Hutch had elite short cone, agility, all that. Anderson, from what I've seen of his testing, does not have that. And looking at this year, most of his stats, he'd had 2 sacks against LA Monroe, 3 against Vandy, 2 against Arkansas, 2 against LSU, who we dominated, 2 against Auburn, whose right tackle transferred because he was seen as so bad and he's come to us to be a backup. Not exactly like Hutch having his game against Ohio State, where he had that one massive game against a premium opposition he could hang his hat on. Anderson, from what I've seen, hasn't had that. So I think him and Hutchinson are about level playing terms for me. Very, 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 very good pass rushers, can easily be in a pass rusher 1 for any team. But if you expect them to win by themselves in the pros, I don't know if they can to the same level as Garrett because they just don't have that athleticism to really fall back. He doesn't have that athleticism to fall back on like Garrett does, because as Matt's mentioned and has been mentioned by the DLP when they did their little podcast on Anderson versus Wright this year. Anderson doesn't win by going around tackles. He keeps faking the outside and going inside. Against certain players, that's just not going to work. He needs to have another plan against the bigger tackles who can shield off that inside. He needs to be able to get around that. Maybe that's something he can work on. He maybe can do it in the pros. I haven't seen it yet from him. And until I can, I'm not going to say he's generational, just like I wouldn't say last year Hutch is generational.
All right. So that's Will Anderson. I know it seems a bit glib to profile him alongside all of these other guys that we've been doing, but if you've not watched any college football at all, maybe that'll be new to you. And we've got one more guy to profile, and hopefully we'll be profiling Drew Sanders.
Yeah, I'll keep this one a lot shorter than my other 2 because we have been going for some time. But it's funny. I was looking at the chat earlier, and Perry made a comment saying, if you want a true superstar player, you need high RAS, high football IQ, and you need a hard worker. And I was thinking, well, it just so happens that my third guy, I think Henley has those, but I think Sanders is that guy. You want a high RAS guy. He is athletically freakish as anything. The football IQ is there from his time at Alabama and from the multiple positions there. And a harder worker you will not find. So, like I say, in terms of Drew Sanders, he's the edge from Arkansas. He's a player who I didn't really pay much attention to this year at Arkansas because I'm all about the quarterback, as everybody knows, but he's a player who grew on me as the year came. So, like I say, he spent a few years at Alabama, spent 2, mainly a rotational guy, saw 280 snaps there last year, but this was his last year before coming out for the draft. He had to do something about it. He transferred to Arkansas, and man, has it worked a treat for them. He was an outright edge player at Alabama. Arkansas have played around with him a little bit at the outside linebacker position, and it has wielded results for them. He's 6'4", he's 235 pounds. And as Bruce Feldman would put it, he is athletically an absolute freak. And he's had himself a year and a half in 12 games. He's accumulated 103 tackles, 13.5 for loss, 9.5 sacks, a pick, 5 pass deflections, 3 forced fumbles. He was first team all SEC, and trust me, that is not easy, especially when you're playing at Arkansas. In terms of the guy himself as a player, I really, really like him. I mean, it's the energy, the motor that he has, and this desire to prove everyone at Alabama wrong that he can be, the player that maybe they thought he was going to be there, because he was a 5-star recruit when he came. He was very highly touted. Everyone thought, he's probably going to be Will Anderson out there, and he was going to get that sort of production as well. And he wasn't able to do so, but what he has done for himself this year, like I said, he's gone from edge to outside linebacker. He's now given himself a tremendous ceiling in the NFL. These off-ball linebackers, when you get guys who can do a little bit of both to an elite level, are like gold dust. And you've seen that he's shot up in drafts. I think he's like in the 40s or the 50s at this moment in time. I think he's at the top of the linebacking list potentially. And he's only played there 1 year. That just kind of goes to show just what the league thinks of him. The length and the fluidity he has, they're rare. The rare combination of athletic traits this guy has. He is one of those. He can watch a play develop, and other players can get 2 or 3 steps on him whilst he sits and observes the play. And when he decides he wants to get involved, it doesn't matter if he's 2 or 3 steps behind, because he will make it up on you. Whether it's a running back going out wide, whether it's a receiver trying to get a step on him, it doesn't matter. The athletic ability, honestly, is something I've not seen in a lot of linebackers before. That's just potentially how good that he's going to be. Let's see, you can walk him up to the line of scrimmage as an edge rusher. He's got a good arsenal of edge rush moves. You can see him spin. You can see him swim. He's got rips. He can do anything really you want him to there, but you can also sort of stack him as a middle linebacker and rush him through the center. You can do a lot of different things with him, and I just like the versatility there. I like the athletic ability that he has. I mean, in the game I watched him actually play against Alabama, and he had a really good game against them. Bryce Young was running for his life from him. He was able to keep pace with him from sideline to sideline. And again, Bryce Young is a very quick quarterback. And this game actually reminded me that Bryce Young is quarterback 1 in this draft. No matter what anyone says about CJ Stroud, Bryce Young's pocket presence is unmatched, and it's going to make him quarterback 1 out of this class going in next year. But anyhow, back to Sanders. 3-down potential in the NFL. You are going to use him against the run on 1st and 2nd downs, and then you're going to use him as a pass rusher on 3rd down. He needs to add a little bit of mass. Like I say, he's 232 pounds. He's 6'5", so he ideally just needs to bulk up a little bit to really be able to thrive in the middle linebacker sort of part of his assignment, and then you can use him on the edge as well. It's still a good size for him there, but he's explosive. He is a game changer, and he is just another who's learning his position. But to be within the consensus top 3 linebackers in a draft class when you've only been starting for a year and it's a position change tells you everything that you need to know about him. I'm really looking forward to seeing him at the next level. I'm looking forward to seeing what a team does with him. Will it be us? I'm not 100% sure about that. I don't know. Maybe he could be Anzalone's long-term replacement here if we're going to have a guy who's going to come in and just be a strength mismatch in the middle and maybe a leader going forward. The IQ, as I say, is there with him, but I don't know. I feel like he's going to go a little too high for my liking, but we'll see with him. I don't really have much more to add than that. Just to say, if you want someone who's athletic, if you want someone who's high IQ, you want someone who's going to do it at the next level, who could be that true potential superstar that you don't see coming out of class, Drew Sanders is your guy. And I'm not just saying that because he's an Arkansas player. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with him at the next level.
Ash?
To be honest, haven't seen that much of him. As I say, like, I've seen probably 1 or 2 games this season. But as you said, like, even as you admitted, mostly focusing on the offense. I can't say too much on him. But yeah, I agree with the assessment that bulk him up a bit. You've got yourself a guy who you can play at any linebacker spot. He could be the Mike first or second down, then you sort of use him as a Sam on the third down if you want to. Rotate with James Houston. Could be a good fit for us. And there's linebacker 3 by PFF, which was surprising to me considering his rise because it's similar to Henley. Because before the season, it was Campbell and Trenton Simpson and Saul was up there. And now Simpson and Saul are both below Henley and Sanders. It's quite a big rise for someone who, as you say, 2 years ago was unheralded. Well, in terms of the college sport, coming out as a 5-star with a 28.8 PFF grade, he's risen a lot and he's grown, which is what you want. You want that year-on-year improvements, and that's what you got from him. So early ways up, maybe, in the words of Yaz.
Just from my brief little bits of watching the highlights of him and Henley as we've both been chatting here, I do feel like Sanders' ceiling is higher, but he has a longer way to go, I would say. But I would bet on Sanders' traits, and if it doesn't work out as a linebacker, maybe you can transition him back to edge. I mean, he's got that height and weight that you can play him there, right? Or do you not think he could play edge at all?
Oh no, I think he can. I think he can play edge. I think he'd actually be better there. He's not good in coverage. I mean, that's the thing for me. The cover. If you're possessing value here, Henley's coverage is a lot better, and the room to grow is a lot more vast. Whereas Sanders will be more of a brutish edge rusher type or a blitzing type who will bring pressure on the quarterback. Henley does not do that. So it kind of depends what you want. They're both incredibly athletically gifted, but do you kind of want an all-round guy who can do it really good, or do you want one guy who you're gonna hang your hat on Drew Sanders being a pass rusher and a run defense specialist, but not a coverage guy? So I think they're both going to be incredibly good players, though. But you are betting on traits for them both because they are still raw at the position. So there are similarities there, but as I say, they both hang their hats on different things. But Sanders is, you look at him, he is built like an NFL player. Like, say, 6'5", he's 230 odd pounds at the minute. I mean, you've got 6'5", 200, you bulk him up a bit, make him 240, 250 at 6'5". Good God, that's got to be like a moving fridge. And it's going to be hard to move him out of the way. He's going to make a lot of good plays. So I don't think he's done his pro day yet. He doesn't have a RAS, but I'll tell you now, it'll be bloody high. So it'll be well in the 9s.
Just quickly to finish off, from all of the players that we've profiled tonight, who do you fancy the most drafting? Who would you be happiest drafting out of all of the people that we've mentioned?
Henley. 100% Diane Henley. I'm all in on this train.
Ash?
Also Henley, because I'm trying not to be biased. But yeah, Henley. Just it's the kind of linebacker we need.
Yeah, for me, it's Ivan Pace. I just think that that's a sort of guy that we could really use in our system. He's the one that just gets me out of my seat the most, and that's kind of what I want when I'm watching. I mean, he may not be the guy that puts the most wins on the board for us, but he's the one who's going to get my heart racing the most. And that's what I kind of care about a little bit as a fan. So, all right.
You know, it's a weird comp for him, and this is not NFL related, but I kind of figure Pace at the next level is going to be like Solskjaer was at Man United back in the day. He had one trait that he landed on, which was his finishing ability, which won games for teams. But he was very solid outside of that. But he found a way to hang around when no one expected him to, because he's got that one elite thing. And Pace's blitz and what he does there will be the thing that keeps him on a team for a very long time when a lot of people would not expect him to. I know it's a comp none of our American friends will get, but just for you two, I thought that was a nice comp.
I get it.
Good.
Makes a lot of sense. Right, we've been going a long time, so for the guys in the chat, we're going to get to all of your questions once we've finished recording the outro here. So hang tight while we go through this. Our next show is going to be this time next week on the main podcast. We are going to be profiling the quarterbacks in the 2023 NFL Draft. A lot of smoke here and there about trading up for a quarterback at 3, or what one might we take at 6, or Hendon Hooker at 18, or we're going to get a backup in the day 3 territory. All of that will be covered next week. You will want to tune into that. There may or may not be a college pod. Check the Twitter for more information later on in the week and have a look. You can find us on Rural the Lions UK on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. The group for Worldwide Fans is Detroit Lions Fans UK 1 Pride Worldwide, and the website with lots of articles going up, including one that is the most read article we've ever had on the site, which went up over the weekend about why the Lions might now be Super Bowl contenders, ROTLUK.com. Don't forget to subscribe and rate us 5 stars on your podcast provider. If you want a chance to win some Lions merch, there is a link down below where you can enter. Also, just to talk about our draft show, because we are now only a month away from it, we have 29 guests confirmed, with more hopefully to be added. Each one will represent a different team from around the NFL. They are people like us who know their team through and through. And depending on where they'll come in from on the show, that'll depend what they talk about. So we'll talk about how they did in 2022, what they're expecting in 2023, who they're expecting to pick, what they think about who they've picked. All of that stuff is going to come out. It's going to be one of the most insane shows we've ever done. It's the most guests we've tried to do by far. We've always tried to get all the other 31 teams so far, and we've not succeeded, but I am so close, and we're going to try and get on some more media type guys as well. So it's going to be an insane show. We'd love it if you guys would join us for it. Over 20 hours of streaming in the weekend, all the way through the draft. Even on day 3, we might also do a viewer takeover hour. So if you want a chance to come on and chat with us or have your say on the draft, that might be during day 3. Still trying to work out the details of that, but it's going to be a terrific show. But yeah, don't forget to tune in to us for the college show later on in the week if it happens, or for the quarterback stuff next week. But for now, for Ryan, who had to depart for his job interview prep for Ant and Ash, I'm Matthew Turner. We'll see you next week. Let's go, Lions. One pride.
One pride.
On pride.
Recording stopped.
All right. Got time for questions?
Yeah. With the college one, I'm hoping we do what. It's just with Ryan having his interviews and that, his time might not be there. So, and we're doing dynasty rankings, and it's so bloody hard. I've never done dynasty before, so
yeah, that's difficult. Right, Perry Ball has got a ridiculous number of questions, so we've got other people with questions as well, so I'm going to try and split them up a bit, but I'm going to start with 2 of his, and there's so many of them, so let's just try and keep it short if we can. First question from Perry, he says, do you think...
No promises.
I knew you would say it. Do you think the Bears will draft mostly offense or wholly offense in the draft? Short answer, no.
Yes, because they need an offensive line, so I think they'll go offensive line quite a lot early.
They also need to retool from a 3-4 to a 4-3, so it's 50-50.
The only thing as bad as their offensive line is their defensive line.
But you've got to protect your franchise quarterback first, because he might be dead if you fix the defensive line first. You may be dead by the time you get around to fixing the offensive line.
I can see them taking Skronsky at 9 if he's there. The only thing is, and it's what I was saying about why we shouldn't be trading for Lamar, is when you have a mobile quarterback who's got wheels, it devalues the offensive line. And I think they know that. And so they should be going offensive line. I think that they'll try and go for that in day 2, day 3. I think that they'll go defense. Then they need to, because that defense is bad. So we'll see.
What was that about short answers, boss?
Harry Ball also asks, do you think the Lions are waiting to sign a player between OTAs between now and OTAs, or between the draft and OTAs? Are there any veteran defensive tackles we can pick up on the cheap to help us?
I think you wait for the draft to play out now. Is my opinion. I think you wait, because we could potentially get 3 or 4 good defenders in the draft, and we might not need any more vets. I think we've got a good number of vets in the defense now.
Yeah, so I think quite a lot of the veterans like Teddy Bridgewater and all that, that's what they're doing. They're waiting now to see where they can get starting spots. It's like him, John Johnson, all that. They're probably biding their time because they don't want to sign for a team, and then they draft someone to play their position. So yeah, we'll see a few.
So for me, we've seen Brad Holmes chase pure value always. If he sees a player he wants to go and get, he'll go and get them. And if he doesn't, he won't. So There's never he's closed the door on this or he's open to this. It really doesn't matter. He's just flexible to do whatever, and he'll take the right course of action when it's appropriate. You can't shoehorn Brad Holmes into anything, to be honest, for me. Dan Pask asks, which round you would like to draft a tight end this year, if any?
5 to 6.
This nearly caused a big argument earlier. This is a sensitive topic you're using now. This got pretty ugly earlier when we started talking tight ends.
I'm sorry.
No, it's me as well. And I know Ash will instantly say about scheme fit and that, but there are just... I like tight ends who are exciting. And I know we don't like exciting tight ends in scheme, but... If we picked Luke Musgrave in round 2, I would not complain. That is all I'm saying. I wouldn't go, oh no, God, what have we done? I'd just be like, oh, okay. And secretly I'd be like, yeah, I really want to see this. But I think realistically we should look later on. If you want one later on as well, the guy from Air Force is really good as a blocker. So I can't remember his name. I think he's an Anderson as well, if I remember rightly. So yeah. He's the one I'd earmarked as a later one if I didn't get one of my preferences.
I can't see him on my board.
To defend myself, it was about the flash. I call them flashy inverted commas in first round. As I said on Discord earlier, if the first round, it's probably an archaic way of thinking, but I want someone that you can sort of know is going to be a day one starter. So yeah, Musgrave or Kincaid in data like round 2, I wouldn't complain too much. It's just the first round's a bit too much for me with those kind of tight ends. If I'm going first round, it's Washington. Otherwise, I'm probably waiting until day 3 and getting a Schoonmaker, Donald Perham, Davis Allen from Clemson. There's quite a few guys who can block but have got receiving upside. Those are the ones I'll be looking at. And then, of course, my guy from Florida State as a UDFA to come in NBA special teams weapon / tight end 4.
I'm trying to count the number of tight end prospects I like in this draft, and I'm above 10.
So, yeah,
it's really deep.
If you're just like ignoring that we're Lions, if you're just looking at good NFL players or what they could be, this is probably the best tight end class in the last decade, maybe.
It could be the best tight end class in history. It really could. It's threatening it. In terms of tight ends I like, at their projected draft position or thereabouts, I like all of the top guys. I like Mayer, I like Musgrave, I like Washington, I like Kincaid, I like Kraft, I like LaPorta. I like Shoemaker, but I'm a little lower on him than some people are. I like Lasu from Alabama, I like Kuntz, I like Mallory, I like Allen, I like Durham. I like all of those top guys at all of their draft positions. So the answer for me is round 1-7. I just don't care. Just take one somewhere.
So put it this way. I mean, if you think about some of the tight end classes in recent years, where was Freiermuth taken? He was taken about 60, something like that, by the Steelers.
Slightly earlier.
Yeah.
He was their second round pick, wasn't
early
he?
50s.
But you could potentially have 6 tight ends off the board by the time Freiermuth was taken in his draft. And Freiermuth is a damn good NFL tight end.
Oh,
that's kind of the level.
55.
He 55. I think you could generally have 6, maybe 7 tight ends gone by then, and he was the first tight end that year. Who am I thinking? 2021.
So,
was Pitts that year? Or was Pitts 2 years ago? No, Pitts would have been that year. It was Pitts then Freiermuth. Whereas you could have 7 guys gone by the time Freiermuth was gone in that draft. That's just how good it could be.
All right. Next question from Lost Oceans says, this might be an easy question, but if you could go back to the 2021 NFL draft, would you take Parsons over Sewell? I think it would be Penne across the board for you guys, but Parsons has been great at the linebacker spot. Parsons has been exceptional. He has been even greater than I thought he'd be, and I already knew that he'd be really good. The reason I didn't want to take him was personal, and at the end of the day, if you took me back to the time that we were doing it, I still don't change my mind. I'm only going to make my decision based on the available information at the time. And you know what? He's a bit of a twat, and I don't want him on my team. Whereas Penne is a fucking legend. So given the fact that they're both elite at their position. And you know what? I think right tackle is potentially more impactful than Parsons. I know that Parsons has been so good on the edge, and that's maybe the most impactful position apart from quarterback, but he still plays a meaningful amount of reps at linebacker, which isn't. So give me Penny.
So I can't lie about this because people can just go back 2 years and check, but I wanted Parsons more than anybody in that draft. So if you take hindsight, if you go back to 2021 and I don't have hindsight, I take Micah Parsons because I was huge on him back then, and I still am huge on him now, and I'm kind of glad that he's been as good as he has because people were laughing at the time saying, Parsons at 7, you're a joke. And I'm like, no, absolutely the right call.
Oh, you were right, yeah. 100%.
With hindsight, I would take Penny because Penny has worked out really well. He's going to be the future franchise left tackle. However, if I went back without hindsight, I would still pick Parsons and I would not feel bad about it.
Yeah, Steve-O makes a good point as to whether we'd have used Parsons like Dallas have used him, because if we don't, then he's not the player he is right now, I guess. But, it's still like how he's turned out. You're absolutely right to think that at the time. Ash?
I don't think I could comment too much because I wasn't really scouted as much back then, not like I was now. But at the time, I was big on Saul because I saw the need and the whole situation with Parsons entering the draft with the personal stuff just put me completely off it, to be honest. So,
right. Perry Ball asks what you guys think of Will McDonald from Iowa.
Good player, but there's a lot of edge players I like more, but that's just personal preference. But good player.
same.
Jamie1948 says, hey guys, great show as usual. What do we think of trading with Arizona from 6-3 and folding in Okuda? Cards really need youth cap space and corners. For D-Hop, we have cap space and need a vet receiver. It would probably cost 2 day 2 picks this year and or next. Is it really worth it if we like Richardson?
I'm having fit.
Yeah, if it's anything along the lines of Brad's trade from earlier, which I highlighted, then no, that's too much. I mean, to be honest, I'd be trading up for 3 for Will Anderson, not Anthony Richardson. So, change the player, then I might agree to it. But maybe a second or a third, and I'd do it, but no more than that.
I'm just having Vietnam War flashbacks to a couple of days ago. I am not for trading Okuda until it's after the draft, because for the first time in a while we have strength in depth at a key position. We have 4 corners currently who can all start on the outside, and you don't have to panic. We've got Sutton, we've got Mosley, we've got Okuda, and we've got Jacobs. Why trade that away? The reason Brad has done what he's done is so we have strength there. We've had injuries there the past couple of seasons. We've had Jerry get injured. We've had Jeff get injured twice in seasons. Why waste the strength in depth just to go up? Stay there, and then if we get a Witherspoon, if we get in Gonzalez, then maybe you could consider it. But until then, I'm just staying put with Jeff and letting him compete, because that's the best thing we can do for the future of our team, in my opinion.
Yeah, you don't lose out by keeping Okuda another year. Either he balls out and you can give him a deal, or he doesn't, and he doesn't affect the cap after this year. But he affects the cap if you trade him, and you're not going to get trade value for him. I don't think there's note there, so...
I just love Jeff. I love his hustle, I love his mentality, I love his strength of will to not let his head get down when things haven't been going his way. There's no player I'm pulling for more on the Lions to be a success than Jeff. And part of it is because the fan base has turned against him through no fault of his own. There are people calling him trash out there and besmirching him as a person, and I'm not standing for it. Now, whether he's trade bait, I think he might be trade bait, but I still want him here. I don't want to trade up to 3. I highlighted that point before. There's no point in giving up value in this draft for players that don't move the needle. And I don't think there's players that move the needle at 3 compared to 6. I just don't think it's worth giving up that value. Whether it's worth trying to make this maneuver for Hopkins, I am more for it than pretty much anyone else on the show. That's been established several times. I don't think he's the wide receiver one anymore, the sort of game-breaking player that he has been in his career. I still think he would be the best wide receiver on the team. And I know that maybe people might not agree with that. The big hit on Hopkins is his cap situation, his contract. I don't want to trade for that contract. I've read several places somewhere say that Arizona are going to have to pay someone to take him. So they might want to day 2 picks. They're going to be lucky to get a pick swap to get rid of the deal. And they're going to have to eat some cap as well. So I don't think you're going to need to have to trade anyone for him for anything. I think that you might be able to get him and actually go up in draft position to get rid of that contract. I think Arizona are in trouble if they want to get rid of him, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a Brock Osweiler 2.0 situation. If you remember that a couple of years ago.
You might gain a 7th round pick to get him. Or sorry, you might go up from the 7th to the 6th in 2024 to take that contract on. Because they don't want him on the books. They want to save cap to retool for next year, and they'll be desperate to get rid of him. So he'll end up at the Patriots, even though they've got Bill O'Brien. I think that's going to be something that just happens. Perry Ball asks his last question, which is, what do you think of Brenton Cox Jr. from Florida? Well, he's not from Florida anymore because he got kicked out. But what did you think of him while he was there?
Go on, Ash. Let's give us your unbiased opinion.
Okay, I Stinky Gator, but he's good. He's actually a good guy. It's just the personal issues because it's the second program he's got kicked out of. So for me, he's falling into that same category. They're not obviously in terms of talent, same like value, same category as Carter. Where if Brad and Dan think he can fit in the locker room and they can get something out of him, I won't moan at it. But if they don't and we pass on it, I'm also not going to moan and say, why didn't we draft him? He's so talented. It's honestly the stuff that we can't see that's the key thing here. And unfortunately, as I say, we can't see it. We have little to no insight into that. And unfortunately, it makes it hard to say whether he's going to work here.
The thing with him, he's got the build, but not the instinct. And that's a problem because there's no production there to back up what he should be able to do. And this is putting the personal issues aside. He's a very good run defender. I'll give him that. But, he's got the build of an edge player. He's got the size of an edge player. And you can do it at the outside linebacker position. But there's no productivity. And that is because, one, the pass rush repertoire is not quite there. And two, that instinct you need just to give you that little bit of advantage to make those plays is just not there. So I don't know if you can... I don't know if that's something you can teach. So for me, it would be a no. Not because of the personal stuff, but I just don't think the instinct's there that he needs.
Yeah, he didn't look good at the combine, if I remember rightly. I took particular eye on him because, of his profile and what's happened to him in his college career. And athletically, he looked fine, but he just looks all at sea in the drills. So, no, not for me. Thanks. Jamie... no, sorry, not Jamie. Mike Marine has 2 questions. First one is, each pick any 3 players regardless of position that can be a difference maker or matchup nightmare. I won't say 3, I'll just say 1 because otherwise we'll be here forever. But a matchup nightmare or difference maker regardless of position.
I'm going to sound like a broken record here. But
Henley?
Ian Henley. And because he is. That's why I'm so high on him. He's going to be a wet dream for a defensive coordinator with the amount you can do with him. Maybe not right away, but in a year or two, he will be a sought-after linebacker. Everyone will be looking for him in the upcoming drafts. They will.
Me? I preface it, you did say regardless of position, so I can say this. Bryce Barringer, the Michigan State punter, he is Jack Fox 2.0. I don't want us to take him, but if you had to ask me out of the draft class, which person's going to come in and potentially do very, very well on the team and probably grade in like the top 5 in his position, it's Bryce Barringer. He's the most certain for me in that. I know special teams don't matter and punters aren't that important, but he's really good. really, really good for a punter.
I'm going to give... Sorry.
No, sorry, I'm trying to think of someone else just to not be so bland.
Right, so I'll give you more time. I'm going to give my answer to this, and then it's also going to be the answer to his second question, which is who would you trade up for between 18 and 48? It's Darnell Washington. It's Darnell Washington. It's Darnell Washington. Now, it might not be pick 28 or whatever it was in the Athletic mock, and it might not be giving up quite as much as they did. But if it goes into early day 2, if you're at pick 35 and he's still on the boards, I'm jumping up and down going, please, please, please do this. Because he takes your offensive line from being dominant to being ridiculous. And his receiving ability is just understated. He's good. Like, he's really good in the passing game, and he'll get better. Like, he wasn't the feature weapon in Georgia. He still had production. But he can do that. Like, he's a blocking tight end with remarkable catching upside. So give me that guy. No one will be able to cover him at 6'7", and no one's going to be able to get round him and Sewell or him and Decker. There's no chance. Goff is going to eat if we take Darnell.
Right, so I've got a couple of quick answers. So one who could be an actual mismatch nightmare. So I'm going to go running back. I'm going to say Jahmyr Gibbs. He is going to be a mismatch nightmare for somebody. Again, I watched the Arkansas game today, the Alabama one. They don't win that game without him because he is the second best runner in this class, and he is the first best receiver in this class amongst running backs. And I think the gap between him and Bijan in terms of their running to their passing, he's nearly as good a runner as Bijan is, whereas Bijan's not as good as a pass catcher as he is. So I think in terms of a matchup nightmare, Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be it. In terms of a sleeper one who could be, then it's Kenny McIntosh all the way. The size, the length, everything you want as a running back to be he's like 6'5", built really big, and he could be stupidly good at the next level as a mismatch option. Like I say, those Georgia running backs are really good pass catchers. They don't have much tread on them, so they've got a lot ready for when they get to the NFL. And his size, it's going to be a nightmare for teams. So he's a sleeper one, for sure.
And between 18 and 48, who do you want?
Oh, my God, just got stole for that.
Stop doing this. There's only one answer. There's only one answer.
Well, there's two, and you've just stole mine. About to pivot. If he falls, Cyrus Torrance.
Oh, he'll fall.
Because I was going to.
Sorry, go on.
Because I was thinking Darnell Washington, and that's why I didn't say Darnell Washington, because I knew Matt would say him, and then I was thinking, oh yeah, trade up Gibbs, and then you come and say him, so I had to pivot and quickly scramble and look at the consensus boards. Yeah, the Cyrus Torrance for me, because everyone else in that range, I don't mind waiting for. So yeah, if we can get a starting guard, even if you have to trade up to like 28 to do it and give up both seconds, I'd do it, because there's our cheap right guard who can anchor that side of the field, and then we can potentially pay Joan at the end of the end of next season, and there's our elite O-line for the next couple of years.
Yeah, at the risk of being a broken record, 18 and 48, it's dying. I can't say any more. We need a linebacker who can be a mismatch against tight ends and running backs. It is our Achilles heel on defense, especially in the NFC North. We've sucked at it for years, and it's something that's absolutely critical that we solve. And he is it, and more.
Right. 2 questions left. Jamie1948 says, any opinion of Dorian Williams?
The Tulane linebacker.
Yes.
Please. Love him. I was going to do him, but then he was one of my cut-off guys. I do really like him. He's one of those guys, again, that's in the sort of 3rd round, 4th round kind of range, who is really good against the run and can do stuff on special teams. I do really like him, but again, there's a lot of mishmash of guys in that area that all blend together. So if we come out with one of like Pace or Williams from that range, I won't be too upset.
So the problem I have with Dorian Williams, he has been a Mike linebacker his entire career at Tulane. He is vastly experienced as an inside linebacker and in that ilk. And coming out of college, he's not one single elite trait as a Mike linebacker he can hang his hat on. And it's like, it's the instinct. He's too slow on a lot of plays. Then you're looking at the pass rush. It's all right, but then there's nothing that he can, like Pace, can hang his hat on his blitz ability and what he can do in there and the sheer strength and will with which he plays. Dorian Williams doesn't have that. He's a safe option as like a fourth or fifth linebacker for me, and that's it. That's the problem I have with him. But he'll be a boom for your special teams, absolutely right away. But I don't see him becoming any more than a linebacker 4 or something like that. And it's just, I expect to see more from a guy who spent his entire collegiate career at a position and has no elite traits at that position to hang his hat on. That just worries me.
All right, last one is from Grandizer, who says, do you have an overrated prospects list, or can you lads give us one overrated prospect each?
I'll give you my top 3 in order. Siaki Ika is number 3. Tyree Wilson is number 2. Adetomiwa Adebare is number 1. The most overrated prospect in ages, all because of the pajama games. The Bears are enamored with him. If the Bears draft him, I'll do a dance of thanks to the gods, because it will be a bad decision from them. But Ika, Wilson, and Adebare, overrated as they come.
For me, okay, so I was going to say a couple of names. I'll add a couple. Van Ness, the Iowa edge, for me as well. Got the athleticism, probably a first rounder, the production of a day 3 guy. And then the other one, and this is going to be controversial because I know people do like him, but I just don't. I think he's got all the tools, but none of the ideas. Keely Ringo, the Georgia cornerback. I don't like it. I don't like what I've seen on tape, unfortunately. He's below Garrett Williams for me. He's below the guy I did from Miami, Tyree Stevenson. If you gave me them in the second over him, I'd be laughing.
How controversial do I want to be?
Controversial as possible. We need the clicks.
I don't know about ranking them, but I'll just give you names going down the board that I think are overrated compared to where they are. And this is me not saying that I dislike them, because I definitely don't dislike any of these prospects pretty much, but just they're massively overrated compared to where I think they should go. Tyree Wilson is up there for sure. Yeah. But you've already mentioned that. Brian Brzee should not be anywhere near the late teens. He just shouldn't. Nolan Smith.
Oh God, you've just stirred Anta.
Yeah, I know. I said that it would be controversial and it would annoy some people. I don't want to take him as Dane Brugler would have him at 19. Thank you very much. That's incredible to me. Keely Ringo is definitely up there for me as well. BJ Ojolari, don't see it.
Yeah.
Where's he ranked out of curiosity?
BJ Ojolari
36.
is 35.
What?
He is 36. He is.
I had him at like 10 on my edge list.
So Dane Brugler.
And that's on my edge list.
Dane Brugler has him at 33. PFN have him at 34. PFF have him at 36. Tankathon have him at 38. And TDN have him at 53. So he's very consistently in that range.
He's currently DE3 behind Murphy and Van Ness. And in front of Foskey. In front of Keon White. In front of Felix Anuke Mazama from Kansas State.
He's below all of them. He should be below Isaiah Maguire and the likes as well. Isaiah Maguire should be up there. Keon White is edge
15.
2. Oh, Jesus Christ.
So there's one more I have to add. No, 3 more. Sorry, I have to add to the list in this range. This isn't compared to the consensus board because this guy's been dragged down by TDN, who have him at 108 because they haven't updated their rankings. Kalijah Cansey is overrated. He's still a very good, extremely high upside player. Got potentially the highest upside of anyone in the draft. He's still overrated for where he is and where I think he'll be as an NFL player. But he could be up there. 18 is insanely rich. Like, no. Just no. See,
Okay, 18. You
won't
did
put-
upset me a bit there. You did
I
upset
won't-
me a bit, but yeah, I agree. 18's just too much. Mid 20s.
I won't push back on that, but I won't agree either.
Fair enough.
I think that given the dearth of DTs this year, I think it's acceptable to draft him a little higher. But I think Keanu Bennett's better than him.
The other two people, Ika is definitely there for me, and Marzi Smith also.
Oh.
My soulmate. Thank you, Matthew Turner. Thank you. He's a run stuffer and that's it. He's got short arms. He can't pass rush. I ain't spending a high pick on that. Thank you.
Right, that is all of that. We do have a question from Grandizer, which I'll say now, but it's for a future show, where he says, can you discuss which of the people on the prospect tracker from Pride of Detroit that you hope the Lions will draft in a future stream? So, Pride of Detroit have a good tracker about who we've met with, and it will bring up some names that we've potentially not discussed before, so perhaps in another episode we can keep that in mind and think of people that we like.
Watch BJ Thompson highlights. You will really like them. He is going to be a stud, but maybe not for us because he's too like Houston in that he's a developmental guy and we don't need another one of those. But BJ Thompson is bloody good.
I don't even have to say it. I've already mentioned him today so many times.
All right. So
Anthony Richardson. Wow.
What?
Nothing.
At 6, maybe, yeah.
I would take Anthony Richardson at 6, and I would be very, very happy.
Same. I'll say quietly.
I'd be really happy. Right, if you're on Twitch, I'm going to raid Chris Perfett, who's preparing the Pride of Detroit channel now. Thank you, everyone, for watching. You've been absolutely terrific, as always. We'll be back next week. Sorry.
And if you could tell them of the gauntlet that has been laid down to them by Roar of the Lions UK and see if they are brave enough to accept. Combine versus the Brits. Can they do it?
Yeah, I'll have to tell Chris now.
Call them out.
Yeah, thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you next week. Bye for now.
Hook the Bears.
And raiding.